Welcome to episode 27 of a podcast of rare antiquities. Today we will once again rebel against the normalcy of the show and dive back into the mainstream as we review Rogue One, a Star Wars story, the first anthology spin-off movie of the Star Wars franchise. The entire Rare Antiquities Rebel Scum gang is back today. My name is Harry, and I'll be your host for today's show.
I am Geoff, I'll be your co-host.
I'm Andrew, I'm one of the guest stars.
And last but not least, Nathan is here.
This moment, the force is strong. Make 10 men feel like 100.
We'll take the next chance. And the next. You're rebels, aren't you?
Save the rebellion! Save the dream!
Okay, so guys, welcome back. It's been a while since we've all been together. It's been a year since episode 7 came out, so just very quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on it. Before we dive into the movie, can you guys give me any idea on what your feelings were or any preconceived notions you may have had with respect to just having Star Wars back into the fold over this past year? Any excitement? Was it too much oversaturation? And what were your feelings or the lead up up to the first Star Wars spin-off?
Yeah, I think my excitement was more muted than for, the mainstream episodes. I really liked what we first saw. The first teaser for Rogue One was very exciting for me. I loved the glimpses. I thought, the more I saw of it, the more I started to like it. Just the look that they were putting together. And I was excited to see a different entry into the Star Wars universe. I wasn't really, really excited, but I was definitely looking forward to it. I was worried about a little bit of oversaturation, but I kind of got over that. I think that, because they're doing sort of a different, it's different, right? Like we're not just seeing the Luke Skywalker saga every year. I think it sidesteps the saturation element there. So that's how I felt.
I was certainly stoked for it. I think knowing that they're going to do these spin-off movies a while back, I think I was a little hesitant. But then after The Force Awakens, which I enjoyed, but it was more of like what we have seen in the past, I kind of wanted to see something new, I think. And that's where Rogue One, everything that I had heard about it and read about it, just in terms of its style being a lot different from what we're used to with the trilogy movies, I was really stoked for it. And just having this expansion of a very small script of A New Hope really bring about some understanding of how the Death Star plans came to be. I was really, really stoked for this. So I was trying to mute my expectations just because, I think with The Force Awakens, it was great. But then after a few watchings, it's certainly, I wanted to temper my expectations when I went into this fully excited.
Well, I was certainly looking forward to seeing something new and different in Star Wars. I live in a world of nerd saturation. So the fact that, when they announced that, okay, we're going to get an anthology movie in between each of the main saga, that didn't bother me too much. And, I was really looking forward to this movie, but I also felt like, I didn't really have any stakes in it if it wasn't good. So I was cautiously optimistic in the lead up. Yeah, I don't know if that made me enjoy it more or less, but that's how I felt leading up to it.
Okay. So did anyone know any spoilers going in? Because I this is one of the first times I really didn't, dive into too much spoilers here. And even though the plot was fairly predictable, because we knew what the conceptual idea of the plot was. How about yourself, Geoff? Any spoilers?
No. Spoiler free, baby.
Anyone else? Spoilers? All spoiler free?
I think I knew about the Kyber crystals, and that was it.
Nathan?
I knew about the Kyber crystals. I knew Vader was going to make an appearance. They show a little bit of him in the trailers anyways. And then I thought I'd read a spoiler, and it turned out to actually, I misinterpreted what the headline was. So I was kind of pleased as to what turned out, but relatively spoiler free other than those things.
What was that spoiler? I'm just curious, Nathan, what that...
I forget exactly what the headline was, but I was under the impression that they had used footage of a female X-Wing pilot. I know they had female pilots, but I don't think that they were the actors that were cut from A New Hope. And that's what I thought that they were using. I think that's my understanding anyways. We'll get into actually what they did do, I suppose. But I had known about this cut female X-Wing, or it might have been a Y-Wing pilot, actually. And I thought that they had added that into the movie.
Yeah, I knew, stupid me. It's like I was trying to gain reactions on the last day, like the day before I watched it, because as stupid, and I feel so bad, I didn't watch it opening night. This is the first time I didn't watch it, a Star Wars movie opening night since, first one came out and like the original one. I'm online reading reactions and they drop a bomb about Vader, what Vader did at the end of the movie, and it's like, fuck. So,
oh man, for you, that's a tough one for you.
Yeah, I was like, fuck. It's like they said that's the Vader massacre scene at the end. It's like, oh fuck. It's like, that kind of ruined the moment a little bit. So again, my fault. I just, again, spoiler. You go read some non-spoiler reviews and some douchebag drops the spoilers. So it's like unintentionally or intentionally, but whatever. Fucking asshole. But it's my fault. Anyways, let's get right into the plot synopsis here. I'm gonna do this really quick to save time, so hopefully I can get it done in less than 12 parsecs. So here goes. Meet Jen Erso, criminal, thief, scoundrel. You'll potentially like her. You see, her dad was kidnapped by the Empire to help build some kind of small moon-like station. They may call it Death Ball, or maybe Starkiller Base or something. Nah, they wouldn't call it something lame like that. Anyways, the rebellion break Jen out of prison so she can help track down her dad and help find out information to destroy this thing. And she joins forces with a merry band of fighters. Kind of reminds me of the Dirty Dozen. Anyways, they go track down old daddy, they steal some blueprint plans of the station, and they fight off the Empire stormtrooper by stormtrooper as they escape. Shit happens, people die, and the plans make it back to the rebellion. Oh, and we see some bad guy in a black mask and cape pop up here and there. He looks familiar? Wonder what his name is. The movie ends confusingly and abruptly as the plans are given to some princess. Why did the movie end there? I wonder what happens next, as I'd like to see that story. The end. So,
wow,
that's the most economical plot synopsis we've ever done on the show.
Well, I'm jokingly, and in the cynicism aside, I shit you not, I wrote, and it's quite obvious. I thought I'd do a little experiment, but I wrote this plot synopsis for a podcast before I saw the film. And I was pretty bang on.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, so that's just based off, the trailers, what and pretty close. Like, you don't know all the names of everybody, but and all the little nitty-gritty details, but that's pretty much exactly what happens. So what I want to do, guys, is I want to start this movie off. Let's go, but don't want to break it down a scene by exact scene. So let's start with just the opening of the story, how the movie opens, whether you want to talk about how it literally opens. And we'll go talk about the whole backstory of Jin when she was young. And you see Galen, her dad, and then her mom, what happens to her mom, and the Empire coming to, take Galen away because he was involved with the Death Star. And you could talk about that entire thing. And let's stop at the point where we finally get the Rogue One title card, which is after this sequence. So it's like your little Bond sequence at the beginning, so to say. So, Geoff, let's start with you first. Go.
I knew we weren't getting an opening crawl, so probably the very first time that I've ever seen a movie where I was interested in see what the heck they were going to do for the title card. Like nobody, you don't give a shit ever. So it was interesting to still see the long time ago words pop up, in a familiar fashion and not go to the opening crawl. I didn't know that they were doing that. And yet it still felt very Star Wars when, we get the opening starfield and the camera pans. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of neat. We jumped right in. I thought that was good. The scenes with young Jin and her father on that planet there. I like the look of it. It really started to look like A New Hope right out of the gate. And that's to the movie's credit. They did a really good job with replicating the look and feel of A New Hope, but at a, obviously in a grander scale, big budget and all of that. So yeah, it was a good opening. I thought it was a good opening, and I liked the Rogue One title card when it did pop up. It felt very Star Wars appropriate, and yet obviously its own thing. So I think they did a good job here with the opening. Actually, the shot of the Imperial shuttle, it's the shots in the trailers as well, where we see like the rings in the sky we're kind of going over the beach there, watching the Imperial shuttle come over. That was a really cool shot.
Mm-hmm. How about seeing Krennic here for the first time? Because this is your introduction to, I guess, the lead villain of the movie.
A good introduction. I really like that actor, whose name I can't remember.
Ben Mendelsohn.
Mendelsohn, thank you. Yeah.
For those who watch Bloodline on Netflix, he's superb in that show.
Yeah, he really is superb on that show. Underappreciated show, Bloodline, but he's really good. He was good. He has that menace to him where he kind of has a kind face, but you could see he's not a good guy. And I like the costume design for this character throughout the film as well. So good intro to the bad guy.
How about the title card then itself then? Because we end on that and you just see Rogue One. Interestingly, they drop a Star Wars story, which I'm glad for the title card. Yeah. And I hate the fucking subtitle there of Star Wars story. It's just terrible.
Yeah, I guess, because that's sort of the name they're giving the anthology series, right? Everything's going to be, it's going to be Han Solo, a Star Wars story or whatever.
Oh, fuck.
I'm glad that that's not in the title because it's not really a part of the title. But yeah, look good. It was, like I said, it was still Star Wars appropriate, but its own thing.
Okay, Andrew, how about yourself? These opening scenes ending with the title card.
I think Geoff certainly covered a lot of it. The introduction of first when they had a long time ago in a galaxy far away, I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome. Then it cuts right into the movie, which after watching 7 movies where you get the crawl, it's a little bit jarring, but at the same time, it's not something that detracts from the movie. And jumping right into it, for me, it's like I'm a huge fan of Mads Mikkelsen. And so that opening sequence with him, with Jin and his wife, I thought was fantastic. And it certainly provided a little backstory. I don't think we wanted to dwell on it for too long. But no, I was really impressed with how they started off and basically set the tone for the rest of the movie.
All right, excellent. Nathan, yourself.
Yeah, I think it was a good initial setup. I did find it weird. I still find it weird that they don't have the opening crawl because, even the video games get a crawl. So I think, we can have, at least maybe a spin-off movie with the crawl. And, and I did like that they dropped the Star Wars story. And I actually don't know if they will continue doing that with the future movies, because I think that's more of a marketing thing. Casual fans are not really certain what to think of this movie and don't really know where its place is in the universe. But the overall look of the movie, I think it really established the grittiness for the rest of the movie. And it probably did a lot of things that I think Lucas would have wanted to do if he had more money for the original trilogy. And blue milk, they brought back the blue milk.
Yeah. Very. I loved the interior design. It was very similar to Luke, the Lars Homestead there. Galen's home.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's probably because they're space farmers, and so probably space farmers just have a certain way to, this is what the house is going to be like. It's going to be utilitarian, and although it's odd that he's farming just his family there on just a planet that does that, they appear to be the only people on.
Yeah, they have the universe has these 3D printer templates. It's like moisture farm. Okay, here you go. Yeah. This is what your house is going to look like. The machinery is just going to build it as is. Oh, and we dropped off a couple of those old Jedi type clothing just to confuse everybody again. Here you go.
Oh boy, yeah.
No, it's kind of cool. But it's interesting how they went back to that. Because the mom was wearing that similar clothing that the Lars family was. And everyone's confused. I think, it's looks like Obi-Wan's clothing. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of this too, and I'm sure we'll all talk about it, is just the amount of fan service that went into this. There's little things like that I think that, oh yeah, okay, this is going to be a nod to the Lars Homestead, and all the clothes are going to be a nod to this, and and blah 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 blah. The blue milk, everything. It's I don't know. It feels very wink wink, but at the same time, it kind of works because you buy it that that this is just how this universe is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see. Oh, actually, I've given my opinion. Yeah, I liked the opening here. I love the location where they shot this. And you could see it was very cold. I remember reading an interview, and now I can apply it to the scene because I think Ben Mendelsohn was saying they had to do multiple takes because it was so windy and rainy that it was affecting the cameras. And you could see it there. They looked like they were freezing their asses off. I don't know where they filmed it. Norway, Iceland, looks somewhere like that. I love the shot of the shuttle coming in. It looks so realistic as it landed in that dirt outcropping. It was beautiful. And I loved, Jin running away and hiding in the hole. And you get Forrest Whitaker's Saw Gerrera kind of rescuing her at the end, which was kind of neat. And then you'll see more of him later. We'll talk more of him later. But overall, loved the beginning. Loved Krennic. It was a good intro. Now let's move on. So now we're going to see Jin as an adult, and we're going to start to shift between a couple of different things here where you're seeing her life. She's in prison. And then you also see cuts with Cassian Andor, who is played by Diego Luna, and Jin by Felicity Jones. And Cassian's on some other planet, some Blade Runner-ish planet there. He's trying to find some information from Insider there, and you have those scenes. So let's talk about these two scenes where with Jin in prison, her escape after Cassian learns of some information there, and we get to also meet the droid of the movie, K2SO. So Nathan, why don't you start with us on this one here?
I like the look of that. I looked it up earlier. I think it's like an in-canon vehicle, like for transporting prisoners. But I did get a kick out of the stormtrooper and just his like, what's this now? And he's covered in mud. And again, like they're really kind of getting back to all the great things about episode 4, just the greediness of it. But yeah, we're just setting up the characters. We're establishing, who they are. The fact that Cassian like murders that guy.
Yeah.
I found that jarring, and I kind of understand like what they were going for, because later they he kind of gives a little bit of a speech about it, and sometimes they just have to do bad things. Although I was confused as to why he did actually kill him. Was it just because he was
I would assume because he realized that guy, if he's going to help that guy escape, he's going to get trapped or killed. And if he just escapes and lets this guy go because he had trouble with his arm, then he might get captured, and then just, if he's tortured, he might give up that information that he just passed to Cassian. So he just ended up killing him for the rebellion.
Well, it's true. But I mean, the information he passed to him was about Bodhi. And It didn't seem as though, the Empire didn't know about this.
He doesn't know that, right?
I guess. No, I was going to say, I almost wish I had more time to actually go see the movie again, because like throughout this whole movie, there's little things I'm like, I'm kind of confused about, certain motivations, or why are they doing this, and after just one viewing, I mean, maybe I'm just not remembering it correctly. But I think again, like they're really setting up the tone of this by the fact that he murders this man in order to escape.
So, Andrew, how about yourself? Any comments on seeing Jyn as an adult, her life in prison, the breakout, or Cassian murdering this guy in cold blood so he can escape?
I think the Cassian murdering the guy in cold blood, it really, for me, that struck me. Like, I had read a few reviews that were spoiler-free, but hinted at the rebellion not being painted in the perfect picture that they had been painted in for the original trilogy, and I like that. Because, like everyone was saying for this movie, like it's a war movie set in the Star Wars universe, and that really is the reality of war. Is that like both sides commit atrocities, both sides do things that they aren't proud of, but they're trying to win the war. And for him to kill him, I think for my perspective is that he knew that the guy would bog him down. He needed to escape because the guy had a bum leg or something. He was worried that probably the information that he had, whether that was a conversation or something else about the rebels, would just get to the Imperials. So him killing him, yeah, it was jarring, but it kind of made sense, and that he needed to escape. But for me, I think the highlight of the opening sequence, which I have to clarify my earlier statement, that I had watched a few of the scenes that had been released on YouTube from Disney, and it was the one where K2SO basically choke slams Jyn, and congratulates her for being rescued. I thought that was great. K2SO was, I think, the big highlight of this movie, and it shows a little bit of his snarkiness. And Jyn's scenes, they weren't anything too out of the ordinary for me, but K2SO and Cassian killing, yeah, differences to what we're used to from Star Wars.
Yeah, I would have shot that motherfucker for sure. When they're talking there, I'm like, why is this guy whispering? He's talking so loud. There's stormtroopers around. Like, shut up, dude. So when he capped him, I was like, hey, good choice. Like, you needed to shoot that dude. He had it coming. But so I was totally good.
But what about the concept of now you're seeing someone who works for the rebellion? Previously, they're all good guys who don't do any bad except, defend themselves or attack the Death Star. And now you're seeing a guy kill in cold blood. Justified or not, they're painting the rebellion, as Andrew and Nathan have mentioned, in a bit of a different light. What's your take on that?
Make perfect sense to me. I'm glad that we actually get some of that, because they are terrorists. Mm-hmm. They can call them rebels, but they are doing things that it's not a black and white universe. That was one of the things I was looking forward to seeing about Rogue One, was were they going to paint this in shades of gray? We don't have any Jedi. We don't have any Sith. So, who are these guys? Are they if they're rebels, then they're going to be making choices like this. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated the integration of that portrayal there. And, he didn't want to shoot him. He's like, he had to. So that was great. K2SO, good introduction to this droid. He kind of reminded me of HK-47.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah.
Even though he's still no HK-47.
No.
Nobody touches HK. That guy needs a movie of his own.
I would watch HK-47, A Star Wars Story, in a heartbeat. Absolutely.
Yeah. Andrew, any? I know Nathan's played it and Jeff's played it. Have you played Knights of the Old Republic? You know about HK?
I know you've been trying for years. I was just trying to Google him really quickly. No, I never played Knights of the Old Republic.
Andrew, get the fuck off the phone.
Sorry.
Holy shit, you've never played Knights of the Old Republic?
No, it came out when I didn't have an Xbox or when I didn't have a console, so I never got a chance. And then, yeah, I know Harry's been trying to convince me for years, but I don't like him that much, so I don't listen to what he says.
That's a fair argument.
Yeah, now with you guys, perhaps I'll get into it, but no, sorry, guys.
That's the best Star Wars game ever, but that's okay. If you ever feel like playing the best Star Wars game ever made, feel free to.
At your discretion.
At your discretion. But Geoff, any comments on Jin? You guys, I know it's early on, and she hasn't done or said much at this point because she's just broken out. So, any comments here or none at all?
I got nothing to say about her just yet. We don't have
a real introduction to her at this point.
Yeah, at this point, correct.
We just met her. I mean, does she even have any dialogue in that scene?
No. Valid point. Let's move on. I'll just add my points here. Yeah, I loved Cassian killing the guy. I thought it was shocking as well to me. I was just like, whoa, okay, this is a new take. And on a second viewing, which I saw last night, yeah, it seemed it was justified. And I totally support it. And I love the shades of gray that they're, as you guys mentioned, that they're painting the Rebel Alliance. And this won't be the only scene. This happens a few more times throughout the movie, and we'll talk about it. Yeah, I liked K2SO's introduction here as he chokeslams Jin. And I love the breakout. It was pretty cool. But I wanted to throw a little bit of trivia, and this has not been confirmed, and I'm surprised nobody has mentioned it online. I haven't seen or heard anything online. I noticed it in my first viewing, and I said I gotta listen to it again for the second viewing, and heard it again. I'm pretty sure one of the stormtroopers there is William Dafoe.
What?
Yes.
Whoa.
William Dafoe. That is it's either Dafoe or somebody is playing his voice. He's on the transport with Jin that gets shot as the rebels break out. The stormtrooper gets shot multiple times and he flails his arms like he's being, turning into the goblin, doing that flaying again. But he has a dialogue before the breakout, and that is William Dafoe's voice in a nutshell. He has a very distinctive voice. So that was him. And if not, it's somebody who sounds exactly like.
Now, did you hear that was a possibility beforehand,
I'm putting my 2 cents in. I'm calling it, and I could be completely wrong, but it sounds like William Dafoe. Maybe they're going to do this. We were arguing about Daniel Craig before, and it actually turned out to be Daniel Craig.
No, I thought that turned out to not be Daniel Craig.
No, I think it was Daniel Craig. Daisy Ridley.
I think it is Daniel Craig.
Daisy Ridley confirmed it was Daniel Craig.
Where did she confirm that?
Well, I just remember her reading an interview.
The internet confirmed it.
The internet confirmed it. Anyways.
Fuck. Yeah.
Anyway. So if they're going to do this, they might have, guest celebrities here playing stormtroopers. So I'm just saying that, throwing that in the pot. So whether it's true or not.
So these Star Wars movies are going to basically turn into the Muppets TV show where it's just like all these celebrities popping up here and there.
Well, you're going to get fucking Drake and Rihanna coming in and shitty rapper celebrities like fucking Ice-T and Ice Cube. They're going to be in there eventually, and fuck. I'm waiting for the Dave Chappelle Stormtrooper. That's what I want.
All right.
Let's move on. So I think now we're cutting into an Imperial scene here. We see Krennic meeting up with the man himself, Tarkin, back from the dead, so to speak, and they start talking about the Death Star and its capabilities. It's a quick scene here establishing their relationship. Any thoughts here, gentlemen? Geoff, go first.
I guess I'm going to put my thoughts on the CG Tarkin. I didn't like it. I mean, I don't know why they felt the need to do this. I guess they need to show that Tarkin's going to be in command of the Death Star because that's the state of things in A New Hope. But no, that really pulls me out of it when CG characters show up like this. You just can't CG a human face yet. It doesn't work. It totally pulled me out of it.
Andrew, how about yourself?
Definitely the main focus of the conversation after the movie concluded in the theater. And when they first showed the back of Tarkin's head, at first I thought it was just going to be bad. He was going to turn around and that would be the end of the scene. I'm very glad that I didn't have any spoilers leading into that Tarkin actually would play not necessarily a major role, but a fairly significant role in the movie. And I felt like the animation got better as the movie progressed. And given how Tarkin has been portrayed in Star Wars Rebels, seeing him on the movie screen, I actually really liked the fact that they used the character to support the movie. And I thought they did a pretty good job in depicting him. And I don't know how they could have done it without the inclusion of Tarkin. And it just kind of brings about more of that backstory with Tarkin that you don't get within A New Hope. So I liked it. I wish the CGI was better. Like when we talk about the very brief CGI at the very end of the movie, I thought that was completely different. I did not like that one.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It was very blatant, but this one, I thought they did a very good job. And so I was really impressed. And that was actually one of the highlights of the movie.
Oh, man. Come on, Andrew.
Really? It's Tarkin.
It's terrible.
I'm on the side with Andrew, man. I loved it.
Oh, come on.
I loved it. This is one of the highlights of the movie for me. I agree. The CG has a little bit of ways to go. It's not perfect. I loved Tarkin's presence here. I loved it, and I loved the interplay between Tarkin and Krennic.
I'm kind of mixed on this a little bit. I mean, he is a necessary character for this movie because of what does happen in New Hope. So you do have to establish him. I was shocked that he had as much dialogue as he did in the movie, not just this scene necessarily, but just later on. We really went to the uncanny valley with the CG. And I'm actually surprised it didn't look
up.
better.
Uncanny Valley, yep.
Okay.
And I think that's what Geoff has. Geoff is suffering from Uncanny Valley here.
Yes. Uncanny Valley. I think we're both.
What do you mean I'm suffering from Uncanny Valley?
But it is. I mean, he is definitely necessary. And I kind of suspected when I read more about like what this movie was supposed to be when they first announced it, that I thought, oh, okay, they'll probably put Tarkin in here. But I figured it would be like a hologram. Right. So that way they didn't have to have it look as good necessarily. If they had him as a hologram, you could kind of get away with him looking a little bit more CG and it would have been fine. I'm kind of mixed on it. And I'm shocked it didn't actually look better because, Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War, I thought that looked pretty good. But I mean, I guess that's because they're mapping like his real face. I liked the interplay there. And I kind of like the way we've established Krennic now as kind of like this guy who kind of has his leash on him, and you sort of see like, oh, like he's just kind of seething underneath when he's talking with Tarkin. I liked that. I liked his performance in that scene.
Yes, I'm in complete agreement here with Andrew and Nathan here. I probably liked it even more than all of you guys. I thought the CGI, while obviously CGI, it was pretty damn fucking good. That's just my opinion. And I don't I suffered a little bit more from the Uncanny Valley with Leia at the end because I felt they just ran out of money and they just said, fuck it. So that's just me. But I thought these scenes were great, and I love the fact that you're establishing Krennic as someone who is a bit insecure. He's power hungry. He's unsure. He wants to get the recognition because really this is his project. And this is a kind of little new interesting facet and a new layer adding into here because, as we'll learn later, Tarkin, kind of screws him over a little bit, and we'll talk about that later. But I love these first scenes here, and I was just very happy. But let's move on. So now, since Jyn is broken out of prison by the rebels, we're heading back to Yavin 4, and we get to see some nice or interesting panoramic shots of those temples on the planet. They established the Rebel Alliance base. What was it like seeing it again here? These scenes, you see Mon Mothma, you see Jimmy Smith's return as Bail Organa. You see the Alliance kind of now acting a little bit more as a MI6 / military organization here. And these are, again, they're not under desperate circumstances here because everything is always so rushed before in the original trilogy. There's no time to linger. Here we get to linger. So what are your thoughts here? Nathan, go ahead first.
Well, it's interesting that you use the word linger because I feel like we're doing that constantly throughout the movie, for better or for worse. And I really like seeing this again. I mean, that's such a great, I wonder if they actually did shoot it again it's somewhere in Mexico or Central America. So yeah, I really liked the shot. And they did a really good job, thought, of recreating feel from episode 4 at the Rebel base. And again, like we're just establishing all the players. And I liked seeing Mon Mothma there. And I kind of liked how they were establishing the rebellion as they're a force now, but it's like, ooh, we're still trying to figure things out. And the scene here, again, like it's strange because it seems like this scene differed from what was shown in the trailers. And I'm kind of glad that they dropped some of the dialogue from Felicity Jones, like some of the stuff, her dialogue in the trailers, which I didn't like. I liked this interplay here and the setting up of the spy story. I thought that's really cool. And again, it's something we just haven't seen before in Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm glad Nathan brought up the differences between the trailer and what actually was shown in the movie, because there's a lot of really corny lines that I'm pretty sure Disney watched this when they ordered the reshoots and like, we're going to have to tinker around with this. Like when she says that we rebel. Like that was like an eye roller moment when watching the trailer. But for me, one of the highlights for this opening, this introduction to Yavin 4 and the Rebel Alliance was bringing back, and I should have looked up her name, but the actress who played Mon Mothma, whose scene was cut from episode 3. Really happy to see her involved, but also you see like the inner workings of the Rebel Alliance. But for me, like what struck me is like later on in the movie and kind of showed like the Rebel Alliance just still isn't on the same page. Like they don't have that backbone that I think they needed some type of, and it's corny to say like a hope, because hope is used throughout this movie and it's brought up, but they needed someone to bring them together to say it's like we can actually win. But seeing Yavin 4, and I love the visuals. Like it was great to see just everything come together, and like they paid homage to A New Hope. Like it didn't have anything that was technologically advanced that would seem jarring, but it felt like just like a New Hope with modern day technologies. So everything seemed to connect.
I really like seeing Jimmy Smits. I don't know why I have such a soft spot for Jimmy Smits, because it's not like he's great or anything, but I liked seeing him. I think it's Genevieve O'Reilly is the name of the actor who plays Mon Mothma, and that was neat to see that he's the same person from episode 3.
You're right, that is her name, yeah.
That's her name, yeah. Yeah, because she's still in Revenge of the Sith, but she doesn't have any lines, or she has like one line or something. So it's cool that it almost feels like, and everybody rips apart the prequels as we have done as well, but it's nice to see references to it. It almost helps legitimize the prequels when we're still getting some of the connective tissue from it, even though we're not huge fans of a lot of that material. It helps like tie it into the greater universe. What I will say is maybe they explored on that cartoon what's on Star Wars Rebels, but we don't see a whole lot of what this rebellion is really all about. Maybe that's too obvious to say, because we know that the Empire is evil. The Jedi kind of know that they're evil, but the Jedi have been eradicated. So is it just Mon Mothma and Bail Organa who kind of know the truth of who the Emperor is? And because they were privy to those events, they were there with Obi-Wan and Yoda. Like the rebellion doesn't seem to exist from any other place than it's obviously good versus evil. Like, well, what is it? Maybe it's stupid to say, and we talked about this when we did Force Awakens, but what are the politics of this rebellion, of this?
Well, I don't think they need to really.
That,
I don't think they really need to establish too much of that here, because we know the tyranny of the Empire from the original trilogy, and I guess a little bit from Revenge of the Sith, seeing what Palpatine did. And
we do know the tyranny. I did, but from the who, I don't know. The rebellion, I mean, you're right. We don't really need it, because we all, I guess that's material that doesn't need to be explored here, because we know what we know from the original trilogy. So I don't know.
But I think it is a good point, because I think part of the thing that makes it weird is that introduced this idea of the gray area, then yeah, because I did think about that too afterwards. And I don't think this is the case, but I mean, the rebellion didn't come out of the separatists movement of the prequels, I don't think.
No.
But it almost seems like it kind of is. Like they're still fighting the same fight in a way. But the separatists were kind of, even though that was all, we don't have to get into that. But I think that's a solid point. When you introduce gray into this black and white universe, then it gets a little muddled sometimes.
Yeah, I liked, for me, I love these scenes because it does establish some legitimacy to the Rebel Alliance. They're not just, some plucky guys just sitting around having a beer, and Porkins eating a burger, and then they're about to attack. Let's take off on an X-wing, and hopefully we can blow them up to save our skins.
They should have CG'd Porkins into this.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
I think Porkins into the lift. We got to get him into his X-wing.
He's the one that destroyed the Star Destroyer. That would have been awesome.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Porkins aside, but I loved the expansion here, where we see Jyn being interrogated. You see some depth to the military legitimacy of what the Alliance is. They're really still small, but they're legitimate, and that they have their claws into everything around all the systems. But, with Cassian's scene before and what you see now, he's an intelligence officer. I liked these scenes. I liked how they were really kind of, going after Jyn because her dad's working for, the Empire, and they assume that she's just on their side and a conspirator, and she's just a criminal and a thief, and, she goes to help. And I loved these scenes, and I liked how calm yet scared Felicity Jones played Jin here. I thought it was a bit of a nuanced performance in these scenes, and I liked it. And I liked also Cassian scenes here, and I don't know who the guy was who was interrogating Jin. I like these scenes here, along with seeing Jimmy Smits and Mon Mothma. So, but what happens, let's move on. So what happens here? Obviously, she agrees to find her dad because he, based on some leaked information from a cargo pilot, they need to find Saw Gerrera, and they head to Jeddah, where this guy is, and they want to get some information because they apparently Saw Gerrera is linked to that leaked information, and she'll be able to track her dad at that point. So let's talk about Jeddah and Saw Gerrera, who's played by Forrest Whitaker, and all of these scenes. Let's talk. It's a lot of information here, guys. But to save time, we'll group it all together so you can talk about Jeddah as a whole, all the way up to its destruction. So here you get, your introduction to Bodhi, your introduction to Saw Gerrera. You learn about the Jedi Temple and the Kyber crystals being what the Empire is doing there. They're retrieving all the Kyber crystals. They're doing their mining there from an old Jedi Temple which will eventually power the Death Star lasers. You get some action here. You see Saw's terrorist team take out an Empire garrison, and Jin and Castian get involved, and then they get captured. You have Bodhi, who's being slightly interrogated and tortured by this Mowgli character. It's like a Vulcan with tentacles. Even it looks like a melted Spock, I guess. So let's talk about all this, including the Death Stars blowing up Jeddah as they escape.
Sure. So I'm going to start with the blowing up of Jeddah by the Death Star. I mean, it looked awesome. It looked great. And what's odd is, even though they're using a mere fraction of the Death Star's power, because, we've all seen it blow up Alderaan, right? And this is a mere fraction of this. I get a much more powerful feeling seeing it like this, like the destructive power of the Death Star. This is the first time it really hit me, even after having seen A New Hope 150,000 times.
And there's another thing here, Geoff, like when they blew it up, you see the after effect of the explosion, even after you see the shockwave go through on the planet's surface. You see the shit still flying up into the stratosphere. Yeah,
great shot, and like I say, I mean, it's very visceral explosion. This is so visceral, and you see what the impact is. That was great. I was under the impression originally that the Death Star didn't have tactical laser abilities until the second Death Star, but I guess that's a minor detail. I wanted more of Forrest Whitaker. That was an interesting character, and just kind of see him get wiped off the face of the Star Wars galaxy and so quickly was kind of unfortunate. It's a good character. I thought he was going to be a bigger player in the film, but it also was when that happened, I was like, oh man, they're probably going to kill all of these motherfuckers, aren't they? And as for the introduction to the rest, didn't love what's the pilot's name there, Bodhi.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that, and even the other two guys, Donnie Yen and the other dude.
Yeah, their names are Chirrut and Maz.
Right. Honestly, I was a little bit disappointed with those guys as well. They just seemed a little, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say one note, but they were not. They felt a little one-dimensional to me at the start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, did you notice that they said that these guys were keeper of the wills?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
I did notice that.
Then Cassian said the temple's gone, so they're useless now.
Yeah,
and they
really cool throwback there. Yeah,
cool throwback. I still don't know what a fucking will is. Someone please enlighten me. What the fuck is a will? Because I thought it was like these documents.
I'm pretty sure Lucas didn't even work it out. That's why it was dropped.
Keeper of the wills.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So it's like at first I thought they were people or a race. And then there's like a document, or it's like
I believe. I don't
know.
Well, because the original screenplay, it's from the Journal of the Wills, so maybe it's a collection of knowledge of like scripture or scrolls or whatever, right? Maybe that's the collection of knowledge that is the religion of the Force. That's kind of how I interpreted it, but I mean, maybe we'll never know.
Yeah, we won't know. But they're keeper of something. So, any other comments? How about the action set piece here, Geoff? With the Saw's terrorist band taking out the garrison and Jin and Cassian getting involved.
That was pretty cool because we don't get a lot of really intimate frontline action in the Star Wars universe, and this did a pretty good job of that, being right in the trenches, if you will, with these guys. So it was a good action set piece. I think it played out well. The best action scenes are always character driven though, and or because the character's involved, or that's what provides the tension, and we don't really know anybody very well yet, so that that removes some of the emotional significance of it, but it sure looked great.
Andrew, yourself, Jeddah.
There's so much stuff to talk about. I love how you guys brought up like the destruction of a port, like of the city and the temple from the Death Star's perspective, because it like that brought about a more terrifying perspective. Like blowing up a planet, yeah, it's pretty terrifying. But actually seeing it from the ground level, which you get to see twice in this movie, it's horrific. And I love how they portrayed it. For me, having watched Rebels and having watched the Clone Wars, the introduction and bringing Saw Gerrera into the movie when he didn't really have much to do felt a little bit too much fan service, and not really fan service in such that like he wasn't that much of a main character in the cartoon, and it could have really been anyone. I thought they just put him in the movie just to have some type of connection to the cartoon series, when they had like little nods throughout the course of the movie that I thought were a lot better. But for me, I love this sequence in general, but I was a little disappointed that there wasn't more exploration of the Jedi Temple. I know they probably wanted to separate the Jedi from what was going on here, but like you see bits of it within Clone Wars and with Rebels, but I would have loved to have seen that on the big screen. Like perhaps like the Empire has desecrated the temple, and like any reminder of the Jedis are gone. But it also brings up, like, they do talk about in A New Hope and the rest of the original trilogy about how the Jedi are really fables. Like you don't hear much about them, but here it is, like this planet is, or the city is built on top of the Jedi Temple. And so the Jedi are pretty well known. I wish they'd explored that more, but I understand why they couldn't, because they really want to distinguish this from like not necessarily being a Jedi movie, but being more about like the ground troops that are part of the Rebel Alliance. But overall, I love this part of the movie.
So how about learning about Galen, and he put the flaw on the Death Star? We learn about that in these scenes here. We see Jin's reaction, because she also thinks her dad is a traitor. You know, she has these memories we see of her before when she's young, and you see Galen in an Imperial uniform and Ben Mendelsohn, having a bottle of whiskey. And, so it's her saying, him saying, I love you and all that stuff, and I'll always protect you. And then she sees the hologram here, and he explains what he did and everything like that. And you see her reaction, Andrew. You also get some other K2SO moments here. And any comments from you, Andrew, here on those scenes?
Well, the sequence where like she's shown the hologram of her dad, that was an amazing performance by Felicity Jones. And like you see, like she's got such a bitterness towards her father earlier on, but then just seeing him, and he provides all the rationale about why he did what he had to do, putting the weakness in the Death Star. Like she played this very, very well, and so I was really impressed. K2SO, like I probably could spend an entire effective of a character he was, and so his sequences were great, which was consistent for him throughout the course of the movie. But Felicity Jones did a fantastic performance during the second.
How about Bodhi? Any comments on Bodhi here?
I wasn't a big fan of Bodhi. Like he wasn't one of the memorable characters. It seemed a little harsh what they were going through in terms of like putting him in jail, but the Bodhi character for me wasn't one that I came away from going, oh, that guy was great. It was like,
all right, so no brown love for Bodhi. Nathan, how about yourself?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack with a lot of these scenes. Yeah, I mean, Geoff, you guys already talked about the Death Star destruction. I thought that looked great. I thought the look of the city on the temple there, that's kind of, I feel like that's probably what Lucas would have wanted for Mos Eisley, right? I mean, it's full of criminals, and it's cramped, and you've got all these stormtroopers walking around. It's there. I mean, and people look kind of destitute. I thought that set, I thought was great. I thought that sabotage, yeah, it's a cool fight, but yeah, Geoff kind of makes a good point that, I mean, we're not really connected to it. And I was pretty underwhelmed by the introduction. I know we had already had an introduction to Bodhi. I thought he was fine. I thought the character was actually fine, but there's nothing really there for that character. Same as Chirrut and Baz, somewhat underwhelmed. Stormtroopers, man, they need an upgrade if they can be taken out by a stick. I mean, we already knew that their armor sucked against blasters, but
well, Ewoks.
Oh boy. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Anyways, again, Felicity Jones has a pretty good problem here for me, where you didn't necessarily see that initial scenes from the child's perspective, right? So we see them as a third party, and so her belief of what her father was, it seemed a bit odd to me. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I understand that, yes, her character would see him that way, but we weren't introduced to him in that fashion. So the performance while good, I don't know, it was kind of flat. But I think again, like the interactions that Krennic had with the other officers and Tarkin, again, I was shocked that Tarkin had so much dialogue. You almost could have gone right had Tarkin as the bad guy. But I liked that interplay there. And I think, again, that was really building up. And I also really loved the shots of when the Death Star engineer operators were setting up the beam weapon, actually, because it was like a real nod to episode 4. And there's so many fan service nods. I mean, in here, like they had the 2 guys from Mos Eisley, which I mentioned. Yep. There's a probe droid. I'm surprised, like Watto wasn't flying over top in a pod racer at some point,
yeah, you see Ponda Baba and Dr. Evison or whatever, I don't know what his name is, but
Dr. Evazan, I think. And that's the guy, that's the human guy, and then Ponda is the other alien looking,
the guy who has an ass for a mouth, right? So okay,
yeah. So those guys got like a real thing for desert planets. I don't know, but I wish we had more Forrest Whitaker. I think he's such a great actor. In fact, a lot of these actors are really good. Even the guy who plays Bodhi, can't remember what his last name is. It's
Riz Ahmed, I think.
Yeah, and I think he's actually like a fantastic actor. And so the fact that, we didn't have more Forrest Whitaker, a little disappointing. But I mean, I understand that, okay, the focus is, he's not the main character. And we're going to kill guys off here. And it's kind of, and actually maybe, I'm changing my opinion. I do like that they killed them off, because then it actually makes it like no one is safe. It's going to say like these sequences here when they're on Jeddah up to when they leave. I mean, I thought it was great, actually.
Yeah, actually, I think this section here is probably my favorite. Could be one of the favorite sequences in the movie, because I really love Saw Gerrera, Forrest Whitaker's character. Like you guys, he played him so unique. It was like I was like I could picture Avery Brooks in this role. And I was getting excited.
A missed opportunity.
Completely missed opportunity. This was Avery Brooks. I really wanted him here, but because he played him really, kind of a couple cans short of a 6-pack here. Like he was a little off, and I think the war did that to him. And you could see he was all mangled up. He had only one foot working, and the other one was completely mechanical. He couldn't breathe, and it was quite interesting. And I remember seeing this character on Clone Wars when I watched it a while ago. The one time, I think he's only in one episode. So whether or not they're starting to tie in all these other, minor characters into the movie, that's fine whether they do it or not. I don't care about that, but I liked what Forrest Whitaker brought to this role. It was a very unique performance. I enjoyed it, and it's too bad. I think if he stayed throughout the movie, that might have helped the movie a little bit. I kind of wish he stayed with the group. I love learning about the Kyber crystals here. Made complete sense. Kyber crystals is going all the way back to Splinter of a Mind's Eye, that book that was released after A New Hope. And I think it was a power crystal that was supposed to kind of like absorb or enhance the Force. So they've kind of changed it. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it seems to be used for a different reason here. This is one of the moments here where I actually liked K2SO the most. Later on in the movie, I felt some of the humor with K2SO was a bit forced and not as funny. But I enjoyed his moments here where it's like, he's just getting the bag and he just drops it and says, well, whatever, screw you guys. And there's another one where he actually shows up, like Felicity Jones, I think, shoots another Imperial droid that looks like him, and then he goes, did you know this was me? I actually got a kick out of that moment.
I laughed at that.
I legitimately laughed out loud at that. I love the action bit here. Something I was surprised you guys didn't mention. Again, realizing that Jin is kind of in the middle of the action, and he sees another rebel, even though they're not part of the rebel team, because Saw's team, terrorist team, he shoots one of them on the roof. And he falls and it blows himself up. He does that to save Jin. And Saw's team even notices that. And I loved these kind of little details because, again, you're making the universe kind of gray. And I love that because, nothing is perfect here. Yeah, Bodhi, so far, probably, I'll say it now, probably, the most disappointing character out of the new bunch. I think he didn't really have a lot to offer in this movie. It's too bad because I like Riz Ahmed. I've seen him in Nightcrawler and a couple other flicks, and he's pretty good. I was kind of hoping he was Kitster, and he would come in and complete the high five and do something like that.
Because there can only be one brown guy in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, there's only one brown guy. That's it. So, yeah, it's a bit unfortunate here, but I love the the ending with the destruction with the Death Star, as we talked about, that was just amazing. And I love the interplay between Ben Mendelsohn again and the CGI Tarkin. I love how Ben Mendelsohn just says, fucking fire already. He's just getting, he's already getting frustrated because he knows he can kind of tell he's being undermined by Tarkin. And I've been in that situation at work, not necessarily firing a weapon, but just like, your bosses just undermine you. They want to take the credit. So it's like, I feel for Krennic here. You do all the work and someone else wants to take the credit for it, or is always undermining your
performance. This is a platform to complain about your boss.
Yes.
You're right though. I thought that was like one of the stronger scenes like for this section of the movie. That scene with Krennic and Tarkin and his performance there was so great.
He's like, he could tell he's already starting to get fucked over and he's getting frustrated, and this will lead to something else, which we'll talk about later. He has to go bitch and complain to somebody else. But anyways, this planet, Jedha's blown up. They make their escape. I loved all of these shots. Something I want to ask you guys. Let's talk about the visuals here, because in the CGI, you see that Jedi statue in the sand. You see all the landing shots and them taking off, and you see all the destruction here, along with the city itself on the top of one of those huge canyons. Amazing visual scenes here. The CGI is really blowing me away in this movie. Well, how about you guys? Let's quickly talk about that here. Geoff, start first. Visually, what's your thoughts so far in this movie?
No, I completely agree. The visual style that they've established, where it's like A New Hope on a bigger budget with a few more coats of grime and dust on top of it. And they do a spectacular job. And yet they show restraint with the camera work. So my favorite shot is seeing that Star Destroyer looming over top of the city. I think that, that's kind of the microcosm of the whole. It looks great, but they're not doing a bunch of weird camera work. And I've said it on the show before, if you want to make this stuff look real, you have to have real cameras in a sense. That camera's got to be in a physical spot that you can believe to sort of ground the whole experience. A lot of credit goes to Gareth Edwards, I think. I think you saw this in Godzilla, which, wasn't a great film for a lot of reasons, but it looked incredible. And the scope of it is still grounded, and he just did such an excellent job. The art design of this film was top notch. If it doesn't win an Academy Award, that'll be criminal.
I would agree. Yeah, it would be criminal. I haven't seen visuals like this in ever. I can't think of something that's been this visually impressive since the original trilogy.
The visuals were spectacular. The sense of scale, that's what they were mentioning. I was reading about Gareth Edwards, his ability to convey just how grand some of these things were. Like that, as Geoff mentioned, that image of the Star Destroyer over the temple and the city. That's just one of a good dozen visuals throughout the course of this movie where you're like, oh my god, this thing is just mammoth. When they're, I'm not sure if this was the part when they're lowering the dish into the Death Star, where you see the Star Destroyer, and the visuals for the Star Destroyer.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Unbelievable. And just visuals about just how big the Death Star was throughout the course of the movie. You see it blocking the sun, you see it coming over the horizon. Breathtaking. You guys can hear it right now. I'm just at a loss for words just how amazing it felt just to see it portrayed in such a way that I'm pretty sure that's why Lucas loved this movie. The stuff that he wanted to do but couldn't, they were able to reproduce here in Rogue One.
Yeah, I feel the same way as all you guys. I love the sense of scale that he gave the Death Star and the Star Destroyers. Visually, love or hate this movie, you can't deny that visually it's pretty amazing. CGI work is really great, other than, if you want to dispute the, CG faces. But I think that the practical effects look great. Town on top of the temple, that fight, the tank thing that the stormtroopers were in. All of that looks so great. And, again, I really think that a lot of this is probably stuff that Lucas would have wanted to do if he had the money for it in episode 4. And so I think that that's why this movie, it really fits in with the rest of the universe. Yeah, it's a beautifully shot movie.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we'll probably agree at the end of this movie that this movie's biggest strength is probably the visuals. The way Gareth Edwards filmed this and did the cinematography and set the stage. So the guys in the CGI department can, the practical side of it, the CGI side of it mesh so well together in this movie. It was very, very remarkable to see. But let's move on. So from here, because they learn of the location of through Bodhi, where her father Galen is, they go to the planet Edu so they can track him down. And let's talk about the entire events that happen on Edu. We have Krennic that learns from Tarkin that Tarkin's still not going easy on him. He says, "Oh, well, the Death Star is complete. It was an interesting performance test, but you're not ready for command because we have no confidence that you can handle security measures because there's been leaked information that they've tracked through from Edu, which was Bodhi." So Krennic goes back and you see him interrogate Galen and his engineering crew. So you have that stuff. Then you also have Jyn meeting her father again and that little battle, the X-Wings coming in. Cassian also giving, this is the interesting aspect here is Cassian is given the orders to execute Galen from the Rebel Alliance. And he decides against it at the last minute. What do you think of these scenes here? K2SO has some other moments of attempted humor. Chirrut and Maze helping out on the sidelines here when there's a little bit of a dogfight between the X-Wings invading. Interesting point here also is that Jyn also makes mention that it's the Alliance bombs, which is true, that kills her father.
Yeah, I like the setting. Wondered why. What's that guy's name? Not Donnie Yen, but the bearded dude.
Well, his name is Maze, I think.
Maze. Okay, so
Maze Malbus.
Why doesn't everybody have one of those fucking guns?
In the universe, because
like get the rebels a few more of those, and war's over, baby. That guy's a death machine with that thing.
Yeah, it's like Arnie with the minigun.
Yeah,
in T2.
Yeah, exactly. So those guys maybe are a bit overpowered soldiers for the setting here. What I really liked about this scene here, and as and Harry, you talked about it, Krennic keeps getting undermined by Tarkin, and that was a really cool dynamic that was going on here that goes on throughout the movie, where they still execute the rest of the scientists there. I thought was the high point of this sequence here, because we're seeing a little bit more behind the scenes of how the Empire works. So that was kind of neat for me to see. As for the Alliance bombs killing her father, I mean, they didn't kill him on purpose. Like they were bombing the facility. Well, I don't know. Were they sent to kill? I know that they had given what's his name orders to assassinate it, but I thought those were.
No, because I think what happened here is the Alliance, they don't know at that point that Galen they don't know that Galen put something in the Death Star, and they don't know of him helping the Alliance. He's about to finish the Death Star. They also don't know that the Death Star is almost operational as it is anyways. So they're saying he's the reason why the Death Star is existing. We need to assassinate the...
Yeah, I got the impression that it was like, this guy's like the weapon master. We need to take him out because he's so good at...
It's just like the U.S. It's like the U.S. saying, okay, for terrorist organizations, there's specific bomb makers that are the best of the best. Well, you got to take them out.
Yeah, you got to take them out. Yeah. That's fair enough. I didn't feel one way or another about the Alliance bombs having killed him.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I disagree, but go ahead. Well, how about Galen himself? Like you see a little bit more of him here. You see Jyn.
Yeah, I mean, he's good. I mean, I like that actor as well. He's really good, and I thought he did a good job with the limited screen time that he has. Star Wars is one of the themes of Star Wars. Obviously, is family. So we're getting the family thread here with the father and the daughter, which is neat. I mean, that gives Jyn the emotional attachment to the mission. We didn't really talk about it before, Harry. You kind of brought it up. I don't know how everybody else feels about the retconning of the Death Star flaw being by the lead designer of the thing. He built it in. So I thought that was a cool idea, that let's make it so that wasn't a flaw, that it was made by design so it could be destroyed. So I thought that was a very strong idea as well. The movie's all fan service, so maybe that was a little bit fan servicey to do that, but I don't know what you guys think.
Well, how about any comments on?
No, I'm just saying, like the explanation, like it wasn't a design flaw, and that it was purposely put there. Basically, it prevents that one big joke for the New Hope from actually being in existence, right? Because there are people saying in New Hope, like, how could you build this grand thing? And oh, look, there's just like this one massive flaw that no one noticed, but it was actually done on purpose. It just, this movie continuously, I think, makes A New Hope even stronger. And so I like that addition, saying that this was something that was done on purpose.
Okay, so Andrew, how about you just expand on these scenes on Edu here?
I'm glad that you brought up the fact that it was rebel bombs that actually ended up killing him, because it just goes to show that decisions are made in war that end up causing casualties that are unexpected. And so highlighting the fact that it was actually the rebels that ended up killing him was, I think, a very emotional part of this movie. And Jin seeing that as well, like, I think it would have been a lot worse had Cassie had killed him and she didn't have an opportunity to say hi to her dad and say how it's going. And it's like, well, I'm dying, but it's nice to see you. Like, I thought the scene was very good. I was a little, I wouldn't say let down, but Cassian's decision not to shoot him, based upon what you'd seen from the character already throughout the progression of the movie. Like, this guy just didn't think twice about killing people that were getting in the way of the Rebel Alliance, and for him to hesitate. I know he was getting closer to Jin and whatnot, but it just seemed like it was such a big shift in the character. But it played into the movie. But I loved the X-Wing scenes. Like, the X-Wing scenes in this movie in general were spectacular. Like, the space battles, I loved seeing every second of it, because that was something that was missing in The Force Awakens. And now being able to see X-Wing dogfights and ground bombardment in such a way that it's unbelievable. Overall, the sequence, it was something that was kind of predictable how things would play out, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, visually, everything looks great. I think the setting is really cool, but overall, I kind of found this a little bit plotting. You know, the fact that it was Alliance bombs that killed her father. That's a cool idea. I don't think they played enough off of that afterwards. The fact that Cassian didn't assassinate him, I guess I like the decision, because I think it would have been harder to connect with that character if he is that cold-blooded. Really spent that much time with Jin. I know it's like we're dealing with movie time and stuff, but I don't really feel like we've had enough time with those two characters together to see any sort of bond form at this point. But I think the standout performance again was Krennic, and I think his scene there with Galen. I mean, I thought that those two characters, like those actors, had some pretty good chemistry, and so I kind of liked sort of seeing, like, you know, behind the scenes of the Imperial war machine. The fact that Galen was killed, I mean, it was by accident, I guess, incidentally, by the Alliance. They would have killed him anyways. I don't think that had any payoff for the rest of the movie. Or maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. I mean, Harry, you've seen the movie 17 times now since it opened, so I'm just going to rely on your knowledge to correct me if I'm wrong. But I mean, I kind of feel like it is sad, I guess, but you know, there's no payoff later for the character of Jyn Erso.
Yeah, I kind of agree here. I think it's a sad moment. You know, it's a bit of a payoff because, you know, she gets to have a last minute moment with her dad, and, you know, he dies, unfortunately, but they still have to go because they have to still escape because stormtroopers are still shooting at them. I agree. I liked the conversation afterwards between her and Cassian in the shuttle as they after the escape, is that she approaches him and says, "You lied about this, and then to me, and you were going to do it." And then he says, "Well, I didn't do it. Even though I had the orders to, I still made the decision not to." And then he's like still complaining to her, "You think you've been through anything? You know, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old." And I liked these scenes here, but you're right. They don't go anywhere after this. And the problem with a story like this is it's a one-off. As at the end of the movie, everyone dies, as we already know. So you really can't build on that because the last act of the movie is just wall-to-wall action. In a movie like this, it's a little tough, but I did like these scenes. I liked, as you agreed, Ben Mendelsohn here was pretty good with Mads Mikkelsen. I liked those scenes, and, you know, he says, you know, "You're done. You know, we've wiped out Jeddah, the last of the Jedi. The Death Star's working, and you're fucked. So, fuck you." I like those scenes here. I like the dogfight as well with the X-Wings coming in. Some great visuals. I like, even though I'm kind of at this point, I don't know if I like it or not like it, where that Chirrut Owe guy, played by Donnie Yen, he uses, he has his Rambo 2 moment where he pulls back on a bow and arrow and shoots down a TIE fighter. I like the lead up to it, though, because it's cold and rainy, and he actually has to warm his hand up, and he blows on his hand and says he has to move it, you know, make it, you know, get the hand loose, and then he fires. So I like the character moment there, the good acting. But yeah, these guys, they're kind of just, I have a problem with these guys throughout the movie. K2SO here, is he starting to get on your nerves? I know, Andrew, you seem to be a fan. I loved him up to this point. At this point onwards, I was starting to get a little bit of annoyed with the humor. The obvious attempts at humor here. How about you guys? K2SO, how's he managing for you guys here? Geoff?
He's not annoying me to this point, but he's definitely plateaued. He doesn't really get any better. His last scene in the film is pretty good. But
yeah, his last scene's good, but the humor, throwing in the humor.
Yeah, it's not doing a whole lot because he doesn't have anything else to contribute from a dialogue perspective. Being that he's a droid, he is one-dimensional because he's a droid. So he gets probably too much screen time. He has too many lines.
Yeah.
And it's, so if they would have just pulled back his dialogue a little bit, then it works fine. It's kind of like C-3PO. C-3PO doesn't have a lot of lines in Star Wars. Well, maybe that's not true, but you don't just showcase the droid because they don't have a range of emotions. They have one thing that they do, so they should just give them that, and then give it screen time to some other characters there. I think that would have been better.
Yeah, as much as I did like the character, it comes to a certain point where okay, yeah, I get he's this type of individual who says what's on his mind, but you don't need it as much as it was portrayed here. I think, as Geoff mentioned, he did plateau, and so there wasn't much any difference earlier in the movie. Character development, yeah, the last sequence that he was in was pretty great, but this one, it was just, comes a time where okay, this person doesn't need to say as much as they're saying, so didn't really need him as much as he was in this particular sequence.
I wasn't really in love with the character overall, and I did reach a point, I don't know if it was necessarily this part of the movie where I was I need him to talk. I remember thinking that, I kind of wonder if the reason why he had so lines, and every line of his is a joke, it feels like. They cast Alan Tudyk. So it's like, hey, just let him do his thing. Just let him riff and he'll just be funny and it'll work. But it didn't work for me.
I'm very mixed on K2SO. We'll talk about his last scene later, which I thought was very effective, but overall, I think he was a mixed bag, unfortunately. And he was a character I was really looking forward to the most in the movie. But now we have, probably one of the more interesting scenes of the movie, as after Edu, Director Krennic goes where I presume is Mustafar. And we see Darth Vader in his castle on Mustafar. They don't mention it like they do on the other planets that we see, which was kind of interesting. It's a little bit different than the other Star Wars movies. It felt very Trek 09, where they started using title cards to name the planets there. But we don't get that here, and that's probably to give the people the surprise that it is Mustafar, and that's Vader's castle. We see Krennic talk to Darth Vader here. Let's talk about this gentleman.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the thing with the title cards, because that was one thing I felt mixed on for a Star Wars movie. It's like, we're on this planet now. We're on this moon here. We're on this planet. And yeah, I agree. I think it is Mustafar. And I believe the design of the castle is something like an original design from, I think, Empire Strikes Back. I believe I read that somewhere today, that they took inspiration from that. And I really liked the scene, although I was a little confused as to why Krennic is going to Vader now. It's like, oh, wow, mommy was mean to me. I'm going to go to dad and get him to agree with me. So it was kind of odd. And I think, again, like, it shows like kind of like the interesting dynamics of how the Empire is run and how Vader fits in, how Tarkin fits in. It's much more clear, like, when you get to episodes 5 and 6. And then other than is one cringeworthy pun, I just don't see Vader doing puns. I felt that this was the exact amount of Vader talking for this movie that you needed. I think it was the right amount.
So how about Vader himself? How did he look to you? His motions, the voice.
I felt
anything like that?
I think it looked great. I remember, like, after the movie, it's sort of been brought up. It's like, well, it sort of has a bit of the red tinge to the eyes and stuff like that. It's like, it was I think it was a neat callback to how episode 4 was lit. And he felt, to me, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of hard to separate my feelings for this character, but I felt he was very menacing. I'm not sure if Krennic felt menaced enough. I mean, it should be that you go to Vader, you should be maybe a little more scared. Maybe Krennic's just kind of a dum-dum, and maybe he's that arrogant. But
well, he is arrogant.
I would have to see it again.
Yeah, so
I would have to see it again to sort of be able to judge the performance. But I felt like he should have maybe felt a little more intimidated to even go see Vader.
To both Ben Mendelsohn and Gareth Edwards' credit, I will say that on both viewings, but confirmed the second time, I did notice Ben Mendelsohn's Krennic gulp the minute the shadow was revealed it's Darth Vader and he's walking towards him.
Okay.
He was scared.
Okay, I'm just not remembering it well enough.
after the conclusion of the sequence, like I was happy if that was the only amount of Vader that we'd see in the course of Rogue One. But it just, the fan service in terms of how Vader looked, which was very in tune with how he looked in A New Hope, I thought was really good. But for me, it was actually more character development for Vader, because he's now got his own little, his shack, his apartment where he goes home to after spending time on the Star Destroyers and Death Star. He decides to pick, of all places, Mustafar.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think I've read online that like pretty much it's confirmed that it's Mustafar. And you see just like him in whatever the Imperial version of a Bacta tank is. I just love this expansion of Vader. Like, yes, he had the corny pun. It was a little snarky, very out of character for Vader. It was nice, but for me, it just showed that like of all the places, it's where he lost his humanity is where he spends the better part of his days. And him coming out and just that imposing nature. Like I noticed the gulp in the first viewing. I thought it just really expanded Vader, and I was really happy with this. And like kind of coming and trying to grovel for like getting his position back, and Vader's like, oh no, don't do this. It's like, you're going to Mom because Dad said no. Mom's going to say no as well, and then decides to choke him just to kind of reinforce that like Vader is pretty much a badass. I loved this expansion of Vader, which got even better at the end of the movie, but we'll wait until that part so they gush even more.
I think Andrew raised a good point there. Like, of all the places he would choose Mustafar to build his sweet crib, that is very fascinating.
Well, it makes complete sense.
It totally does. Yeah, it does. So I think that was a great touch. I thought he looked good. I mean, I was happy with it. James Earl Jones sounded a little older, but it was good. I want to know who was in the suit. I don't have that information, but the body language worked for me. What was the pun? I missed. You both brought it up.
Don't choke on your aspirations. As he's choking him.
Yeah, I love that, actually. I thought that was good because Vader's talks some shit, guys. You probably forget that he does talk some shit in the original trilogy. So putting a little dig in there like that, I thought was perfectly fine, was in character.
A dig, but not a pun.
Better than Are You an Angel?
Yeah.
I can make you an angel. Do you want to be an angel?
No.
That would have been funny.
Places a cat.
I would have made it. That would have been my line. Do you want to be an angel?
Or his Fortress of Solitude was a cabin in the fields of Naboo where he can roll around and remember the good old times, you know.
Oh, boy. No, I forgot to mention he's also got like a dark side butler.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It's got to be Snoke.
Yeah.
That's Snoke. I call it right now.
It's Snoke, yeah.
Overall, a good interaction. I think maybe Harry, you can clear it up because you've seen it a couple times, but I was unclear why Krennic ran to Darth Vader, like for what? I didn't really get that. But then it's also unclear the role that Darth Vader plays in the command structure at this point in time. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a non-issue. Again, Harry, maybe you can elucidate that for us, but I thought it was a good scene.
Yeah, it's a good scene. To answer your question, Geoff, I'm not sure. I think it's just a scene to get Vader there, because if they were going to use him at the end of the movie, him just showing up would be too jarring. So they sent him here as an introduction, and I don't think this really serves Vader more, aside from the fact that we get to see his castle, which was hinted at since the days of yore. And I loved it. I loved seeing the castle. On my first viewing, when I saw the lava and then Krennic's shuttle pulling up to a castle, I'm saying, oh fucking shit, no way, they're showing Vader's castle. And I was like, I was doing the shuffle in my seat. I was doing a happy dance. So it was pretty good. I loved the interior design of it too. I loved how the gates open up and Darth Vader runs through, walks through all the smoke. I thought the body language was definitely there. Completely fine. I just feel that he was a bit too bulky, whether it was the guy playing him or the shoulder pads. I thought maybe he was about to, go play some football. My cousin joked that Vader's been injecting during this time.
You got Sly to give him some of that sweet HGH.
Yeah, he's taking some HGH or horse tranquilizers or whatever gets
that's what was in the Bacta tank. He's actually just that's what's in the Bacta tank.
But I love the Bacta tank scene. I know we mentioned it briefly, but I thought that scene was awesome. And as much as everyone, harps on the guy, I think this could have been a cool opportunity for Hayden to come in there and do something.
I agree.
I think I would be completely open for that. I think that would have been a great scene if they had Hayden there and they lingered on it a little bit more. And that was awesome.
I agree. Yeah,
I agree.
I bet it was maybe talked about, but it might have just been too much of a landmine that they're like, we don't want to go there because they don't know how the fans are going to react.
But if he had no dialogue, if he's just sitting there on a respirator or whatever, that'd be fine.
No, I agree, and I think it would have been a nice nod to have him in there. But I bet there's a conversations like maybe we shouldn't even touch it.
Well, it's also a money thing too, right? From the studio's perspective, whether they don't want Hayden there for the backlash or, you get the actor who played him, they'll have to pay him more money than just some guy sitting there, some no-namer, right? So
he doesn't get paid very much.
I don't know if he commands that the kind of. I mean, and it is Disney. I mean, I'm sure Disney can afford Christian Haydenson for one scene.
It's Christian Haydenson. I love. He doesn't even get the respect. Christian Haydenson. It's Hayden Christensen, but that's okay.
Fuck him and his name.
Oh, Hayden Christian. Yeah, sorry.
Christian Haydenson. That's his name from now on. We have decided.
He may now come back to Star Wars.
You are now Hayden or Christian Haydenson.
Or they could have gotten Jake Lloyd. He's old enough now.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. Jake Lloyd. Everyone's expecting Hayden Christensen. It's Jake Lloyd.
They break him out of rehab or wherever he's in right now and make that one appearance. And it could have been Hayden Christensen's head. We don't know.
Yeah, no, it's Lloyd Jake now. Sorry, it's Lloyd Jake now.
I guess maybe I'll just finish while Jeff's gone. I can just continue with my comments just on this part. What I also liked here was I liked Krennic here too, because you get to see that at this point, he's pretty desperate. He realizes that he's not getting any favoritism from Tarkin, and he can kind of see where this is going. And you know what? In the end, it kind of makes Krennic a bit more of a sympathetic character because, as I mentioned before, he's kind of relatable in a sense, even though he's a bad guy. He can't get no respect. He's like Rodney Dangerfield. He's got no respect. So.
It's kind of funny that actually I would almost argue that he best developed character of the whole movie, whereas all the good guys, all the protagonists are not that well developed, which is sort of an odd. Like usually it's almost the other way around, where the bad guy is just a stand-in for just evil, I guess. But you're right. I totally agree.
Yeah. So I think that's just again, it just keeps. It develops, again, the dynamic that'll come into play later with Tarkin and how Tarkin just takes over the Death Star once it's completely operational. And you can see some of the inner politics here that are coming in with the Empire. And it's kind of like your office day environment. And it's like, I enjoyed these scenes. So after Vader's castle, we head back with the heroes back to the Yavin base, and then we start to have these meetings around the round table there. Jyn explaining to Mon Mothma and the rest of the Alliance about the plans of the Death Star and about her father, how he built in a trap and they need to steal the plans to really understand how to destroy the station. The interesting part here is you get some initial hesitation from the Alliance. There are different factions in the Alliance, some people voting to side with her, some people voting saying, no, the Alliance is finished, we're giving up. This was an interesting take. So I just wanted to talk quickly about these scenes here where they're back here. And then you get Jin's speech about trying to, convince them to go, about hope and everything like that. And it still doesn't even convince Mon Mothma. And then Cassian finds a group of people who believe her, and then you get your dirty dozen or dirty 2 dozen or whatever it is, and then they head off to Scarif. So before they go to Scarif, how about all these scenes back at Yavin base?
Well, I like the idea of Alliance leaders, like everybody's afraid. They've seen the demonstration of the Death Star, and it did exactly what it was meant to do, which was terrorize everybody. And it seems to have worked. Everybody's sort of scared into submission now. Nobody wants to continue to fight, or not everybody anyway. So there's some division. So that concept was good. I like that they worked that in there. The scene didn't work all that well for me. It reminded me of that scene in The Matrix Reloaded where, there's the fighting amongst the council, like, should we go fight the bad guys or not? And it's like, yeah, you gotta go fight the fucking bad guys. Like, what kind of rebels are you? Like, you're already up against, immeasurable odds. So it didn't quite play off all that well. And Jin's dialogue here bothered me with that. This is where she speaks that line, I think, right? Rebellions are built on hope, which is super cheesy, and really didn't like that. That line bugged me in the trailers. I hoped we're going to lose it, and they didn't. But the fact that they, you've got the rebellion within the rebellion now. There's just this one group. They're like, we got to go get this done. And, I like that take on it, but that they're going to go and do it. And, you increasingly get the feeling that this could be a one-way mission. So that was kind of neat.
I'm curious about the Alliance's command structure, Because when Mon Mothma says that they need to have complete consensus in order to perform this mission, you don't get a sense of like who the actual leader is, right? Because there should be a point where like in any meeting that you have, like people provide their input, and like is it a majority vote or what? And so not seeing the rebels be able to come to a decision kind of shows, I don't want to say lack of a backbone, but their lack of faith in this individual saying that there is a weakness, and for them to capitulate versus actually putting forth some type of offensive to go on this perhaps loose lead or false lead that there is a weakness in the Death Star. I don't know. I would have liked to have seen them come to the decision, and for them just to say like we're going to surrender, basically all hope is gone. I thought it was more of a plot point versus an expansion of the inner turmoil, if there is turmoil within the Rebel Alliance. So I didn't like it. Geoff's comment in regards to her speech, ended up one of those corny speeches that they unfortunately kept in the movie. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of the sequence.
I did like the sequence, other than her speech. I didn't care for that. I did like Cassian's speech for the most part. I think it could have been maybe a little bit better. But I really like this idea of this infighting now with the rebels. And Geoff brought it up, where it's like, yeah, they're now cowed and like they're afraid of the Death Star, as they should be. And the other thing that I thought was a neat idea was that no one actually believed them that Galen had built in this weakness. No one really believed that. So that was kind of part of their opposition. Like, well, we're not going to go bother getting the plans.
Yeah, because we don't trust you could not be telling the truth because your dad's works for the Imperials and you could be a sympathizer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that was also the thing that I thought was then why, even though I think the scene just on its own kind of works, it doesn't really fit in with the fact that her father has just been killed incidentally and she's now learned that, they were going to go there and assassinate him anyways. And so now she's totally on board with the rebels. In the grand scheme of things for the movie, it's maybe a little weird. I kind of wonder if this is we haven't really talked about the fact that this movie underwent major reshoots. So I don't know if this is an unfortunate casualty of the reshoots and the rewrite of the film, because now we're kind of hitting the third act, and I believe this is where the reshoots and the rework of the movie is at the third act. I wish they had done more with the leaders of the Alliance, but I did like this interplay of like, we're all fucked, we can't figure out how we're going to get out.
I partially agree with you guys here. I think with a little bit of reworking of the dialogue and maybe with the development of the Rebel Alliance leaders, like I had no problem with Jin's speech. I liked it. And I like the fact that, there are factions of the Alliance that are just worried because they should be terrorized of the Death Star, as we talked about, and then not necessarily trusting the source of the information. So they're hesitant. So this is all real stuff that I can see happening, and I'd love these scenes. But however, what I think could have worked better here, even you could still show the hesitation between all the different leaders of the Alliance or sub-leaders or whoever they are. But then Mon Mothma makes a decision still and says, believes her. She's the leader of the Rebel Alliance, I believe that's the case. And she says, we still need to do this and I need volunteers. And I think that's where you might have had a bit of a stronger situation, even though you're kind of, raping the scene in Return of the Jedi where you have the volunteers go there, you see Han, Chewie, Leia, and Luke come in saying, I'm with you too. But I think you could have done it here on a little bit more of a serious note and say, Jin says, I need help. And then Cassian comes in with a group of people, says, I'll volunteer. I'll help you. I believe you. You even have K2SO even saying the same joke later, or you could have Chirrut and Maz and whoever else and a bunch of other no-name infantry people all raise their hands saying they're going to go. I think that could have been a bigger payoff at this moment here. And then that's just the plan. They're going to go. They don't need to sneak off. And once they're inside, then the rebels will come and create a diversion. And it's all planned that way. I think that would have been a bit better, but I'm not sure if then you're just replicating Return of the Jedi. But I think structurally that makes a more satisfying payoff. But it is interesting. But I think it's not as strong as it needed to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's not as strong as it needed to be, and I think we needed Mon Mothma to step up here and say like we're doing this thing.
Yeah, that was what was needed here. So, anyone else have any comments here?
I like sort of how the way you would want to see it play out. Even though, it might have just been a bit of a play on Return of the Jedi, but I think to kind of get us connect the scene of moving into the final sequence of the movie, I think it would have been a lot cleaner and we could have just gotten through it faster, and as opposed to this scene, which is a little bit clunky.
Never thought I'd say it, but I prefer Harry's version.
Well, it's bound to happen. Anyway, so now we go into the third act of the movie, and there's a lot to digest here, so I don't want to break it out scene by scene. Let's just talk about all of Scarif. Their infiltration, the land battle, the infantry battle, the characters who die or survive, or whoever you want to talk about, all the way up to prior to we see the Man in Black come into play here. So let's talk about all of this, including, Krennic and his appearances here and what he's doing. So let's go. Lots to discuss. Nathan, please start.
Well, I keep bringing up Krennic. He's just the standout character of this whole movie, and I kind of like seeing him unravel a little bit when the operation goes down. Overall, like this sequence, I think is really strong. I had a couple of problems. It felt very video game-ish when they're trying to get the disc out. I thought, who came up with this system? And for some reason, it just irked me seeing this. It felt so artificial. This artificial obstacle to put them in their way. The
I was expecting Tom
K2SO
Cruise to show up.
Oh, geez. I mean, that would have been perfect. I mean, they almost should have just done that. But it felt like an artificial obstacle they put in there to heighten the tension because I thought all the stuff with K2SO at this point was really strong. And I did like the beach battle. One thing I did not like were the no-name soldiers. They looked like they were beamed up or transported there directly from the Vietnam War. At one point, I felt like one of them should have been wearing a necklace of ears that he'd cut off of stormtroopers. It was such an obvious look for some of these soldiers, but
and he says, "I'm all ears." He makes a joke, "I'm all ears."
Oh yeah, that would have been great. But I think I did like this, and it was really cool. The tension of like, okay, we can get in, we've got to kind of get out, and then the shield ship that hovers over the planet, and the space battle. Space battle I thought was great. We have some cool cameos from Gold Leader and Red Leader. We see what happened to the previous Red 5 before Luke took on that call name. And as a piece of action,
that guy was That guy was an incompetent fuck. It's like it looked like he couldn't even.
Which guy?
The Red 5.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, I can't even fly. Like he was just, I don't know what the fuck's going on.
That's why he's not Red 5 anymore.
Oh man, that was embarrassing.
I am disappointed we didn't see Porkins.
I think everyone's saying, "Where's the fuck is Biggs? Where's Wedge? Where's Porkins?"
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing I'm hearing about. It's like, I mean, I love the throwbacks, but I don't think I needed to see all those characters.
Well, I could see why Biggs wouldn't be, because it doesn't matter. But anyways, I mean, this is probably one of my favorite action sequences of any Star Wars movie, and it really reminded me a lot of Return of the Jedi, because the way they would cut between the land battle and the space battle in Return of the Jedi was really good, and I thought they did a really good job with that here. The way everyone dies, or not everyone up to this point. I guess everyone. There's no emotion there for me because I didn't feel a huge connection to these characters. I don't feel they're really all that. I didn't feel connected to them. I don't think that they were fleshed out enough for me to care when they die. A lot of people die by grenades in this movie too.
Well, that's
like
okay.
Half of them.
That's okay. It's a war. We don't see a lot of grenades in Star Wars prior to this movie. You see,
that's true.
You see a flash of a thermal detonator, but that's about it.
I know, but it just seemed odd that there was just a lot of deaths by grenades. I mean, yes, you're right. It's a war, but yeah. So I mean, everyone's death. I don't know. Didn't connect with it. I did also find it odd that this was also the part where, and I already brought up the reshoots, where I really noticed a difference in these sequences versus what was in the first trailer.
Yeah, because they're running towards, you even see Jyn running towards an Imperial Walker on the beach.
Yeah, and also they're also running through that subway area, and she's got the plans with her that, it looked like a hard drive.
Well, that's what she takes. That's what she takes initially.
That's what she takes. She's running away with it.
Yeah.
And there's also another scene from the trailer with Krennic on that beach as well. So again, this third act obviously changed quite a bit from what was initially shot to what the final product was. But I think the final product was really solid.
Wow. Last third, it's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, just go.
Space battle. I'm just going to say space battle. For me, I missed this tremendously in The Force Awakens, and the way they do the space battle, I'm glad Nathan brought up the swap between the ground battle and the space battle. It was unbelievable how they did this. And so seeing a proper space battle with modern CGI was just spectacular. And I love the cut-ins to all the various characters from A New Hope in terms of the pilots. Like, I thought that was done very seamlessly. And for those, it was a great fan service for those who were familiar with the trilogy more so than like just casual fans. I love the sequence. I thought the plot device that they used in order to make it look like Cassian was dead, like them having to climb up to remove this hard drive, was a little over the top. But it actually had also the one part from the trailer that I wish that they had kept in the movie, was seeing that TIE fighter. Like when you see Jim like coming out to that one console, and in the trailer you see this TIE fighter just pop up. I wish they had kept that. I thought that was one of the coolest parts of the trailers that had been released.
I read an article where they said, do you remember how Maz does the rocket launcher and you see the flinch on the AT-AT? And he's about to come back, and then the X-Wing shoots him down. In the original cut of the movie, they replicate that scene again. TIE fighter comes up, but an X-Wing just shoots it away. That was it. So they said, we're doing it twice, so they just removed it.
Oh, okay.
So unfortunately, there's nothing special.
I still thought it would have been cool. I really just like this, the third act of this movie. I thought it was very well done. I know we're going to be talking about it quite a bit, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, no, because this is all of it. So how about the character deaths? K2SO, Chirrut, Maz. You can even talk about now Jin and Cassian and Krennic. They're all there. The ending of everybody there. Like, what are your comments? Did you feel anything for these characters? Any good things here? Bad things?
I thought actually Chirrut and Baze, like those deaths were the ones that had the most impact. Like Jin, Cassian, going into this movie, you pretty much knew everyone was going to die. It was a matter of how they were going to die, and it didn't have as much of an emotional impact as I felt with Chirrut and Baze. And like him, with Chirrut seeing his friend go out there, like screaming at him not to go, and Baze saying, "I'm with the Force, and the Force is with me." Like, that was a really powerful moment. And then Chirrut basically going on a suicide mission, just trying to kill as many stormtroopers as he possibly could. I thought those were the most impactful deaths in this whole sequence. I wish they had more when it came to some of the other deaths, but I still thought that the way that they did it, knowing that everyone was going to die coming into this movie, was still very well done.
The space battle I thought was awesome. That was a highlight of the film for me. I really like that one shot where they're racing to get into the shield, under the shield, and those last couple X-Wings don't make it, and they kind of like skid on the surface of the shield like they just hit. It was kind of like they hit like a frozen lake or something and were skidding across the surface. So that was a really, really cool visual. I was somewhat disappointed by the ground battle. Some of the really cool shots, as Nathan alluded to, some of the really cool shots from the original teaser didn't make it. My favorite one in particular, where we're kind of running along the beach with the rebel soldiers and we pan up to see the Imperial walkers shooting kind of right into the camera. I think that was the closing shot of the original teaser, and that didn't make it into the final cut.
And that's Jin and Cassian running with all the other soldiers.
Yeah, so that was too bad that something like that didn't make it in. The character deaths, I felt I didn't connect to these characters, so them dying didn't have an emotional impact for me. And that's a real shame because, we haven't been treated to that type of brutality in Star Wars before. I should have felt something when all of the main characters bite it at the end here. And, they'll kind of get their hero moment before, where they can sacrifice themselves to the cause, which is fine. I thought the battle was lacking. I mean, it must have been a casualty of the reshoots because it didn't feel as grandiose as the other battles that we were treated to here. So, that's too bad for the climax of the film. I mean, Scarif looked awesome. Great setting. It's just the battle didn't do it.
How about Krennic?
As far as...
Well, how about Krennic's death?
Poetic justice, I suppose. He dies at the hands of the Death Star, which was appropriate.
Yeah, because Tarkin,
that was the one
because Tarkin realizes, he says, "Well, where's Krennic? Oh, he's on the surface, sir." And he goes, okay, fire. You may fire when ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Can we get a single reactor laser burst down there?
Well, no, that's exactly what happened. Because I don't think probably wasn't his plan to blow up the whole base. So it's like, Krennic's down there. Okay, that's it. Go.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Oh, the rebels are down there too. Yeah. We want to kill them too. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
but
totally.
I think that's a little interesting wrinkle in this whole thing, is that interplay between that power struggle between Tarkin and Krennic here.
Yeah, that was really good.
Because Tarkin says, well, I will alert the Emperor of its success because I'm the one that mentioned something about this idea to the Emperor, even though it was those fucking Geonosians who Dooku got the plans from. So I don't think, I'm pretty sure the Emperor knows a little bit more. But anyways, you'd think the Emperor might be a little more in tune with what's going on. But yeah, Tarkin's like, well, I was
I was totally standing on the bridge of that Star Destroyer when we were watching this thing get built 20 years ago. So yeah, fuck you. And all the horses you rode in on, zap. That was cool. And again, we get to see the destructive power of the Death Star again, which was awesome. And the final moments with Jyn and Cassian. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was shocked that they killed every single character. I think, Harry, you weren't surprised that. You said you weren't surprised, and Andrew, you said you had expected that. I expected there to be casualties, but I didn't think everybody was going to get killed. And I'm not sure that I agree with that choice. That's okay. I guess that they all died. It's fine.
I partially agree with you guys. It's kind of funny. Even though I love most of the visuals here, I think everything on Scarif was probably my least favorite parts of the movie. I love everything before, and it's kind of funny. I see fandoms, like the internet fandom and Star Wars fandoms reverse. They say, well, the beginning is too choppy, but that's where I find more of the interesting character dynamics are happening. And I'm getting to know these characters, and everything here is a bit rushed. And even though I'm praising the earlier parts of the film, there still isn't enough of character development on these characters. Probably because there are too many characters that they try and make. Like, you have the A plus and the A in Jyn and Cassian, but then you have the A minus characters that are trying to make them A minus characters with Chirrut and Maz and K2SO. But really, I feel maybe Chirrut and Maz especially, and Bodhi should not have been here in this movie. We didn't even talk about Bodhi, and I think his scenes were the worst in this section here. It's nice to see the brown man trying to help out. Of course, he's got to be the engineer, the dark guy. Yeah. So, but that's all they're good for. He didn't even shoot anybody or did anything, but that's okay. We can, drag a wire and connect it. So no problem. One day we'll get love in the Star Wars universe. There will be a brown man who will be a Jedi one day.
He'll be one of those support Jedi in the back ranks, still probably wiring together some force fields or something.
They won't even give him that.
Technically, but.
They won't even give him that. He's just going to be taking the coffee orders for the day. All right, what do you guys want? All right, I'm heading down. I'll grab it.
Blue milk? Okay, you got it. Yeah.
On a more serious note, even though the visuals were amazing, I liked aspects of the space battle, as you guys agreed. I loved the inclusion of the Red Squadron, Gold Squadron leaders there. I loved certain shots of the space battle, but you're not really feeling a big connection of what's going up there. So for me, it was kind of, if you don't have one of the main characters involved in that battle, I don't really care about it too much. It was nice to see. I'm glad they did it. It just didn't do a lot for me. The ground battle I liked a little bit more. I liked seeing a lot of the infantry troops. I liked seeing some of those alien creatures there. And, I love the one alien guy who's like one of those wide mouth guys, and sees the Imperial Walker approach him, and he goes, I was laughing. I love that. I needed more of that, and I thought that would have been funny. And you have the other guy who's the gunner on the ship, and one thing I didn't like, though, I don't know if you guys noticed this, man, those fucking walkers were taken down pretty easily, blowing apart.
Yeah, what was that about? I mean, in fact, there's like very little threat from those walkers, it felt like.
Yeah, nothing. They didn't even do anything. They just show them walking around, and then they just get blown up, and the legs are being torn apart, and I'm figuring, well, if you guys have this tech already and these guys are nothing, why didn't you have the proper weaponry on Hoth?
It's a big contrast to Empire Strikes Back, just in terms of how imposing the walkers were. A little disappointing.
Yeah, that was a bit disappointing, and I think the walkers shouldn't have been taken down as easily, and they should have been shown to really just wreak devastation upon all the troops there. The stuff inside with Jyn and Cassian, I didn't care too much of that. While I didn't have any emotional reactions to anybody dying, the one that I kind of felt the worst about was K2SO's moments. I like those moments, how he sacrificed himself. I thought that was well done. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of the character, I thought that was good. The stuff on the railings there with Jyn and Cassian and Krennic was kind of ho-hum, and it was kind of even funny too. We always complain about the villains. They give away the plan to the hero. I'm doing this, but then Jyn says the same thing. She does the opposite. Well, I found a flaw, and now everyone's going to know it. And What happens if, things didn't work out in their favor? Why would she admit that? I didn't get that. So I didn't really like that scene, but I will mention that there are handrails.
Yeah,
they're on the ledges there. So, Han Solo, sorry. But,
I guess they fired those. They fired those safety inspectors.
They just used a different contractor. They just used a different contractor to build the base.
They sent him to Scarif. The Tarkin says, I'm taking credit for all the hand railings. Look at the cost savings measures, Pulpy. I'll just send. I'm sending these guys to Scarif. With the rest of the heroes, Chirrut and Maz, I hated these scenes. The Force is with me. I'm one with the Force. And I mean, that's fine. But, you got all these accurate death troopers there shooting and they don't shoot him. And it's one thing if he kind of moved. Because if he's a guy who's kind of a little bit in tune with the Force or something, but he just walks, they let him walk there. I know they blow the thing up and he dies, but I wasn't a fan of these scenes. And then Maz going on his suicide run there. And I found that this was kind of really one of the worst parts of the movie with very little payoff and emotional weight. Aside from that, I wasn't happy. I mean, I like the scene with Jin and Cassian at the end because I like he says they know they're going to die, but he says, your father would have been proud of you. I like those moments, but I agree that you don't feel much for these characters because there's too many. It feels like a TNG movie at this point. There's too many characters to service, and I think that's a detriment. And it impacted the third act. So then, gents, let's move on to what probably most fanboys love the most. I'll see if you guys love it. So as Tarkin blows up the surface or the base on Scarif, we see that the plans were transmitted. Jin was successful in aligning the satellite dish. They get it out to the Alliance ships in space outside of Scarif, and as they're escaping, Darth Vader's Star Destroyer just warps in and just crushes some of those ships as he arrives. Then he says they alert him that there's a message that was sent, and he says prepare a boarding party. And it's kind of weird because he's just the lone boarding party member, so I don't understand why he said prepare the boarding party. But wait, I'll just do it. So
I got this, boys.
Yeah, I got this, boys. So you see Darth Vader's scene. Geoff, I'll give you the honor of going first.
He fucked those guys up big time. I love the use of both the Force powers and like that one where he holds that guy up to the ceiling for a second, and then I don't know if he slams them against the wall after. That was cool, and just he sucks all their guns out of their hands. And
actually, you know what he does, Geoff? As I noticed this on the second time, the guy he throws up to the ceiling, he's held there as he still cuts down other guys. But as he passes underneath him, he slices him in half.
Oh, sweet! I did not notice that. It was pretty awesome. I'll say that. I thought that was a really good depiction of the Darth Vader that we've never really had a chance to see. So we finally, all these movies, 7, 8 movies now, we finally got to see Darth Vader cut loose. So yeah, thumbs up.
Oh my God, I love the sequence. For those, I'm not sure if any of you guys do watch Rebels, they've given a couple shows where they show just how much of a badass Vader actually was in the suit. And so to see it on the big screen, and I didn't notice the guy getting cut in half, but I read about it today. I'm thinking oh my God, I got to rush out and watch this, just because with Vader in the original trilogy, you don't see it. In A New Hope, he's subdued. With Empire Strikes Back, he's kind of holding back on Luke, and then Return of the Jedi, he's not a tremendous badass. He's having a father-son moment, father-son bonding, if you want to put it. So you don't get to see just the merciless killer that Vader is, that he has that massive reputation for. And this was by far the best part of the movie, and just emphasizes just how scared shitless the rebel troopers are when you see the beginning of A New Hope and you see Vader appear. I thought this was a perfect cap. I said before that I was happy with the previous scene with Vader, but this was worth the admission alone.
When this movie was announced, and then later on when they said that Vader would have a small part in it, I remember thinking that, if I don't see Vader kill some fools, I'm going to be real upset. And this was a real payoff for me. I liked how it had a bit of a horror movie vibe, not a lot, but a little bit. When they pass the disc through the door and the lightsaber comes to the door, and then the scene, it's still going. And yeah, I felt, this is the badass Vader that, we all want to see on the big screen. I thought it was great. And I think, again, it works really well that it's short and to the point, and they're not stretching it out just to give us more Vader.
I'm a bit mixed on this because when I first saw it, I actually did not like it. And that's kind of surprising because I felt it was a very fanboyish moment that somebody would throw it in here. And I also didn't initially like the way he moved because obviously now you're filmmaking in a different time. And I thought he was way too fluid, fast. His body movement didn't feel right. Felt very like I was watching a fan film. And especially at the end when he's just kind of staring off into space, he's on the ledge about the precipice about to fall off into the vast unknown, and he's just, that's okay, I'm here. It felt fanboyish to me, and on second viewing, I changed my mind. I loved the moment. That wasn't true. He still has that kind of stiff moments, but I think it's more with the hand gestures that I really didn't like, the throwing, the pulling up, the pulling down, the pushing to the side and all that stuff. I think that could have just, a little tweaking there could have been better, but I liked his body movements and his stance in the original scene with Krennic. I didn't like the end shot where he's just kind of staring off into space, and that felt really out of place. A bit mixed, but mostly I like it. And it felt, I agree, it did feel like a little bit of a horror movie. And I guess you got to pay it off to the fans. So I'm happy, yet, I think it could have been a bit better, personally. That's just from maybe I just have too many expectations when it comes to Darth Vader. He has to be perfect, or I find flaws. So that just might be me. The movie ends then after this with, really quickly, after the Vader massacre scene here, where as Corellian Corvette or whatever that is just storms off and escapes and goes into warp, you see the guy who has the plans and he just gives it to Leia. You see the CGI Leia there and she says, "So we have hope," or something like that. And then the movie cuts to credits very abruptly.
Well, I mean, that CGI Leia just did not work for me. You're right. It felt kind of abrupt. I felt that way leaving the theater, but then the next day I watched episode 4 and I felt like, it was like, okay, I understand why they did it that way now. And so if you were to kind of watch them together, they kind of fit together nicely. For the millionth time, we've heard hope in this movie. They should have just called the movie Hope 1. I'm a little bit mixed. I understand that I think you had to end the movie this way. I see why they did it. And so I can live with that.
The Leia animation was not good. I would have been content just seeing just the back of her head. That was about it. But anyways, I still didn't like the whole Leia sequence. However, I did like the fact that it did abruptly end because it's a perfect transition into A New Hope. Like, I said that in the theater, like, I just want to go home and watch it, which I haven't had a chance to do so. But I thought it was a perfect transition into episode 4.
Well, okay, so the Leia CG, I just need to put in my 2 cents. It sucked. And I did find it too abrupt. And yeah, they kind of needed to end the movie this way simply because of how episode 4 starts. But that doesn't make it good, That just means they kind of painted themselves into a corner with the movie as a concept where they're like, okay, well, we got to show step by step exactly how the setup at the start of episode 4 is. And that does create an odd... It's like almost an epilogue to Rogue One, right? All of our main characters are dead, they're gone, and then we have this kind of weird sequence. I mean, if it wasn't for episode 4, it wouldn't exist. So it doesn't help. Like, this is supposed to be the standalone story, right? It's so hooked into the start of episode 4 that I think I don't know what they would have done differently, but I don't think that they should have done it the way that they did. It almost ties it in too much. And I think that's a weakness from the filmmakers here.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what else they could have done, but as you mentioned, Geoff, I think they painted themselves into a corner and, they're 2 hours plus already. So they're saying, okay, let's just end it here. We'll show them Leia getting the plans. And then, that's all, folks. Let's just quickly talk about the characters and their motivations, because the movie is done now. Like, who was your favorite? What worked? What didn't work for you? Is there any nuance here? And how about the acting?
So I thought Saw Gerrera was the most interesting character, and Forrest Whitaker gave the best performance. I like Jyn. Jyn Erso was a fine character, and Felicity Jones's performance was certainly good. But other than Krennic was fantastic. Ben Mendelsohn was also excellent. And that's kind of it. Everybody else, man, I could have done without everybody. You kind of already said it here in the third act. It's like a Star Trek movie. We've got 7 characters and we got to give everybody their due. But because you got 7 characters, you don't really end up being able to give anybody their due because they're not good characters. They weren't well fleshed out. They didn't connect me to anything. They were just rebel soldiers, one-dimensional, and that's a real problem for me because if you don't have good characters in your story, you have a hard time making that story work well. So you can't really speak to their performances. They all did fine with what they were given, but they weren't given much. That's a real shame.
I thought the acting was great in terms of the characters, but Geoff hit it in that they didn't give enough of a backstory for us to really truly care. For when I said that you knew everyone was going to die, even though you knew everyone was going to die, you still wanted to have that true emotional connection. And I felt like I came out of the movie, I did really like the movie, but I wanted more in terms of understanding these characters and their motivations. And the person that you come out with liking quote unquote liking the most or having the most development. It is Krennic, bad guy. You would hope that would actually be the rebels. And I think it's just that desire to want to know more about their backstory, but there wasn't enough time. Like, had they developed them through like Rebels or Clone Wars or through something else, it would have had more of an impact, but unfortunately it didn't. And I think it's just the nature of the standalone movie in itself. But I love how you guys have brought up The Next Generation. It was too much in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I thought all the actors were fine. I think Ben Mendelsohn was the real standout in this movie. Forrest Whitaker was great too. We just didn't get enough of him, but I think Mendelsohn was the best. I like the idea of all these characters, except maybe Baz there. I mean, we know nothing about him. Chirrut, an interesting idea, but I like the idea of who Jyn Erso is. I like the idea of what Cassian is, but they don't develop any of this for us. So it's like, well, and who cares, right? And I think that's a real negative of this movie. That was not the fault of any of the particular actors. I think that they all did really well for what they were given.
Yeah, I agree. I liked these characters felt a bit more grounded than some of the characters that we got in The Force Awakens, because I think that they didn't over-emote. And I felt that that's what I was getting. Everybody was on a constant high, like emotional high at all times in A Force Awakens. Here it felt a little bit more grounded, nuanced, dirty, and I liked that a lot more. But I agree, because you have too many characters to service here, everybody suffers, including Jyn and Cassian. The only guy who does not suffer is Krennic, because the bad guy shouldn't get so much more screen time. I think that was the perfect amount that he got. He was there all the time, but not there. I loved his interplay between him and Tarkin and him and the Vader. And he got his, poetic justice, as you mentioned, Geoff, at the end. And I thought that was one of the more interesting threads of the movie. I liked Felicity Jones and Diego Luna the most. The rest of the characters, I didn't like a lot. Chirrut and Maz, they're throwaway characters for me. I think there's a nugget of an idea with Chirrut being, whether he's force sensitive or not, and these keeper the wills. I think that's something to be explored, another story for another time. Here, I think they just negatively impact the movie. K2SO, I found him grating on me for half the time, and the other half I loved. He had a couple of good jokes that I genuinely laughed at, and I loved his death scene. His death was the best one out of the bunch. But I wish we got more, and I think because too many characters, Jyn and Cassian needed more development for her to be a stronger character, because she doesn't have other movies to go on to. And that's a shame, because I thought she and Cassian are both very interesting characters. I like the concept of these characters more than any of the characters we got in The Force Awakens. But the unfortunate reality is their development isn't enough like the characters got on The Force Awakens. So that's a shame. How about thematically, guys? There's some interesting themes here with the Alliance that we're getting. The world isn't as black and white as it was pictured in the original trilogy, especially with the Rebels, as I mentioned. Any comments here on that or any other themes that we're presenting? Because it is a war movie. People die, things happen. We have military decisions that are impacting people's lives here. Are they trying to say anything here? Was Gareth Edwards saying, I want to make this a war movie and I want to be different? Why?
I think at even a higher level than just that. I think this movie for Lucasfilm and Disney is an experiment to see if they do different things with the Star Wars universe. Because if they do have to stick to this idea of just these epic battles between good and evil, they're not going to have a lot to work with if they want to do spin-off movies. And it works well for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The way, Ant-Man is a little bit different. The way Winter Soldier is a little bit different. And so, but it presents sort of a unique, actually maybe almost like a problem to introduce this world of grays into a black and white universe like Star Wars. But I think overall, thematically, it works to sort of show this gritty nature of what the Alliance has to do to try and win against the Empire, which, they are so... the power dynamic, the rebels don't have the military might. So, of course, the strike from the shadows idea removes sort of this romantic nature of what the rebels are kind of fighting for, which I think is a neat idea. I haven't really, fully formed my opinion on whether or not that works or whether or not it's good for Star Wars. At this point, I'm going to say it's like an experiment that so far has worked well.
Sorry, has worked well?
Has worked well as to whether or not it's good for Star Wars overall. I'm not sure. It's very nebulous with me right now. I'm still have mixed feelings about it.
I like the change of tone, but I think it's just for this movie. I compare it kind of to how like DS9 was in comparison to The Next Generation, where The Next Generation is this beautiful look at the future that most people get along with. DS9 showed the gritty reality of conflict, and that behind this perfect exterior, there's also a lot of questionable actions that go on. I did like how they completely changed the pace of this particular movie for the standalone. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case with the trilogy movies moving forward. And so I like that change in tone and showing more of the gritty aspects of war. I don't think they necessarily need to keep it for future installments. But even though I did really enjoy this movie and the tone shift, I'm still nervous for these standalones just because of the choice of the subjects for the next one. But I did think it was a necessary change that explored the inner workings of what goes on with two sides in conflict. But at the same time, I'm also looking forward to getting back to the trilogy with episode 8.
Yeah, I think it was a smart move to take a bit of a shift thematically here, where it's not, we got to, do whatever it takes. That opens the sandbox up a little bit. I didn't think about how that would impact the Star Wars universe at a greater level, like Nathan kind of alluded to. Is this going to be good for Star Wars to have that open to us now, where it is a bit grayer? Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. It at least gives them somewhere else to go, which I think may ultimately prove to be a good thing. I thought thematically the film worked very well. It didn't muddle its messages. Military decisions had to be made. People had to do things that they might not have otherwise, in order for the cause. So that was all good. I thought that all worked very well. Sometimes that the war part of Star Wars is kind of underneath. I'll give them a thumbs up to that.
Yeah, I agree. I like the fact that they're taking a chance, as we talked about, use the word experimentation. You can't just do the same thing every time. And I think I remember hearing on some kind of video interview with Gareth Edwards saying, well, if you're not bringing anything new to the table, then why bother? So I like the direction that they went here. Thematically, it all works. I love the gray tones. Tonally, it's here. I liked how the characters were a little bit, nuanced. There were some layers here. They're willing to do whatever it takes to win the battle, and that reflects. I don't think Gareth Edwards is necessarily making a commentary on U.S. politics or anything like that. It's just the nature of war. Each side does bad things in order to win. And that's just the reality of the situation. A lot of people, a lot of older Star Wars fans would probably say it might gravitate towards a movie like this because they're going to say, this is a movie for adults, not for kids. And I can see that here because this is really not a movie, even though kids are going to be seeing this for sure, but it's really not meant for them. This is geared towards more of a more mature audience here. So I liked that, but the problems with this movie are more with the characters themselves in order to make it work. But before we finish off here and get our final thoughts, two final points I wanted to bring up here. The direction in combination with the writing and the dialogue and the musical score. So let's talk about this here. So Geoff, please start us off.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with the score because I was very happy with the score. And that's after being, somewhat disappointed with the score for The Force Awakens, which was serviceable but didn't stand out. This was very effective because, we had a lot of the familiar Star Wars themes and it sounded like a Star Wars film, but it also sounded like its own entity. Sometimes you'll watch like a sequel. The music, like the composer is different for the sequel, but not as good as the original composer. So you'll get a lot of the same themes, but the score just doesn't work because when it veers off of the original music, it sounds like shit. I'm trying to think of it at some of the Harry Potter movies because John Williams did the first one and that was it. So everything else the other 7 Harry Potter movies just sound like some guy trying to be John Williams and can't pull it off. But this, Michael Giacchino, I think is the guy's name. I thought he did an excellent job of taking the Star Wars themes and making something that is its own. So excellent job on the score. Direction, in the hands of Gareth Edwards, this film looked fantastic. It was well shot. It looked like Star Wars, and yet it was its own animal. And I thought he did a terrific job of that. We talked about how well he portrays the scale and the scope of the universe, and did a great job of getting us into the trenches in a few moments there. As far as direction to the actors go, and that's hard to say. We can, see into the writing a little bit. The dialogue was perfectly serviceable, but nothing more than that. And maybe in the hands of a brilliant screenwriter who was somehow able to flesh out characters with only a few lines and limited screen time. Maybe we needed a longer film here. I hate to say it, but maybe we did. Again, everything, the writing was serviceable. It was a tight story, so it was a well-written plot. I can't think of anything that didn't make sense or any logic problems from a dialogue perspective. It just it didn't amaze.
I'm glad Geoff brought up the music, because I said to one of my friends, like, that was actually the most, was actually at the end credits when you see music by, and you just expect John Williams to appear, Michael Giacchino. And knowing how Michael Giacchino has scored some other movies, like the Star Trek movie, the rebooted Star Trek movie, also a couple of Disney movies, I thought he did an amazing job of blending the music in with what we're expecting from John Williams. And so you came out of that thinking, like, if it had been John Williams, you wouldn't have been surprised. So that was a really nice compliment to the movie. I really enjoyed that. It gives hope for 8 and 9. We all love John Williams to death. He's not getting any younger. That if, for example, we unfortunately were to lose John Williams, the trilogy, the music would be in good hands. And so I really liked how it benefited the movie. I'm really curious to hear about what actually happened with the reshoots. Because the direction, like we talked about, Gareth Edwards' ability to convey the scope, I thought that was great. It would be interesting to see what his vision was initially versus what actually happened. Because I had heard that the movie that was initially heard right on the internet, that the movie was a lot darker than it ended up being. So I think that would have been a better representation of what Gareth Edwards had wanted to convey through the movie had we seen that original cut. And hopefully with the special edition that gets released over a period, like the 4th special edition that gets released, maybe we'll see an ultimate cut of the movie. But I thought the actors were great. I thought the director did the best job that he probably could with them, but it wasn't anything that was spectacular that completely changed the game of filmmaking.
For a novice director, I think Edwards did a really good job. To be given a Star Wars movie as effectively your third movie of your professional career. I mean, that's a big deal. And so I think he did a really great job. And yeah, the dialogue is just serviceable. I think that could have used a little bit more work. Probably a lot of the reshoots just had more to do with light, maybe a lighter tone. Like maybe he went. Yeah, I read that rumor as well, like it was just too dark. Disney didn't like that. The one thing I would say about the score is I don't remember really the score at all. And I think maybe that's a good thing, because I don't think a traditional Star Wars score would have worked for this movie. It wasn't like the Star Wars action music that you would normally get. I just like the more subdued type of score that we got here. And I guess he only had like 4 weeks to work on the score. So I think it was just fine for what it was supposed to do.
I agree. I think the score was serviceable, and he only had 4 weeks to do it. So considering that timeline and that time frame, I think that he did a very good job here. He could have gone, full Imperial March here and there and stuff like that, and he didn't do that. He was restrained. I got hints of Jin's theme. I think that could have been a bit more pronounced, and there was, for some odd reason, Chirrut gets a theme, for such a, B character. They give him a theme, which was a bit of an odd choice, but that's okay. I think for the most part, most of the action scenes are serviceable, but there was nothing here that was memorable. Because, he is no John Williams. There is nobody who will be John Williams, but it was far from a bad score. And I'm not going to rip the guy for having such a short time on it. I would have loved to have seen what Alexander Desplat would have provided here, but for some reason he left the project. The direction, Gareth Edwards, he did a good job again with the reshoots here. I don't know how it impacts it. I think I would have preferred to see that darker vision, just because then, you're really going off in that tangent that's really different. And I think that's a good thing for the franchise, because if they wanted to go a little bit more humorous here, and if they started to just throw in more K2SO jokes, I didn't think they worked. So I was kind of disappointed, and some of the scenes cut from the trailers left me wanting, because the scale of some of those shots just looked so beautiful. I think we could have had maybe a bit more of an interesting movie here. The dialogue, it is Star Wars, but leaves a little bit to be desired. I was a bit disappointed. I thought they could have reworked some of the dialogue here, but to make it a little bit more tight and more funny when they needed to be, but it was a mixed bag on the dialogue. That's just me. So, gentlemen, anyone else want to bring up anything before we get into our recommendations?
There was one thing that when we talked about, and I brought up, like, is this a good or Star Wars to go a different tone? Kind of reminded a little bit of the new Star Trek reboot, and actually just even the shows of the past where they change tone over time. And I would kind of argue that the tone change of the new Star Trek movies maybe hasn't worked out so well. So that's just one thing that, to kind of think about going forward with, like, changing. I mean, I'm all for changing it, but, we just have to make sure it's, like, in the right direction. Well, as though I have anything to do about it, but, kind of keep that in mind. I hope they do keep that in mind going forward with the anthology movies.
Any further comments?
No, I'm good. I'm fine.
Okay, guys. So this is it. Your final recommendations, guys.
Well, I absolutely recommend it. I don't know if I would classify it as a rare antiquity. I mean, I think it will certainly be remembered for the first experiment for the Star Wars universe, but it's kind of hard to say at this point, but I think it won't really go down as a rare antiquity.
How about a ranking then? Where does this sit with you?
Oh, a ranking?
In terms of all the Star Wars movies.
I like it more than any of the prequels. I don't think I like it more than what we have for episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7. Mm-hmm. So I would sort of kind of place it like maybe sort of in between in the two. And it's a low bar to clear though with episode 2 for me. So I mean, it's always going to be above that.
So how about with respect to the most recent movie, Force Awakens? I seem to recall you had said, Force Awakens is just below, in between the prequels and the originals. So where does this compare to that?
I think it's pretty much on the same level. I mean, again, like I've watched Force Awakens a bunch of times now. I've only seen Rogue One once, so this may change. But I think actually I might like Force Awakens just a little bit more. But this is so new and shiny, I'm having a hard time placing it. But I still think maybe Force Awakens works for me a little bit better.
Okay, Andrew.
Certainly, absolutely recommend it to people. I think it's a fantastic movie. But I agree with Nathan that I don't think it's a rare antiquity. I don't think it's something that is going to, I'm not necessarily saying it's going to hold the test of time, but it's not one of those that I think is going to be that special. Like, it's a great movie. It's fun to watch. What I really appreciate about it, it gives, I think, a better appreciation for episode 4, or New Hope, and kind of strengthens the story. In terms of the ranking, I think this is better than Force Awakens just because it's something different. Force Awakens, while it was fun, it was enjoyable, it was still too much of a rehashing. It didn't rock the boat, which is, I think, a smart move from Disney's part. But what I liked about this is that it was stylistically different and showed a different side to Star Wars that you've seen a little bit of in Rebels and Clone Wars, and just enhances the universe. So I put it behind A New Hope, and I think I had Force Awakens a lot higher than I have it now. I think Force Awakens, it's after the original trilogy, but I still put Rogue One above Force Awakens.
So, Geoff, how about yourself?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll recommend the movie, but I'll say straight up, I'm really disappointed, guys, with this film. I walked out of there not feeling happy with it. I'm just really disappointed in Rogue One. I think that has to do with, as we said, the characters being non-entities. And when you don't have good characters, then I don't know what I'm watching. I'm just watching, a well-shot movie, and it was that. But this isn't going to be a rare antiquity. I got to see it again, but man, I'm actually not pleased with the results here.
And then how about the ranking there, Geoff? Just on your first pass here. The
ranking for me, I mean, original trilogy is 1, 2, and 3, and the order kind of switches sometimes for those 3. Force Awakens after that. And then Rogue One after Force Awakens by a good distance, and then the prequels at some point at the bottom of a smelly, musty old barrel.
Okay, I agree with you guys. I give this kind of a middle-of-the-road recommend. Kind of like very similar to where Force Awakens was. I agree, it's not a rare antiquity. I think it tries to do something special, but if the characters were more fleshed out, and if I cared about them a little bit more, I think the payoff in the third act would have made this movie something very, very special. But because it just ends up being a generic action movie with Star Wars polish, and it's beautiful to look at, but the characters needed to be a bit stronger, and I think just to do that, you needed to cut off some of those B characters there and just really focus on Jyn and Cassian, in my opinion. I think they could have had they had a bit of chemistry between them, but because there was so little time and so little detail fleshed out, that was the film's biggest problem. Even though I like Jyn and Cassian a lot, but I like tonally where this movie went, and it's a bit of a shame. I think they almost had it here, and for some reason, they just said, let's do a Dirty Dozen movie. And, I don't think the Dirty Dozen is kind of viewed that favorably. It's kind of a fun movie to watch, but you don't really give a fuck about everybody, so because there's too many characters, so I'm surprised they'd want to replicate that formula here. It is not a rare antiquity, as I mentioned. My ranking would be definitely the original trilogy, followed by Phantom Menace, as I mentioned, Force Awakens, and then Rogue One, then episodes 3 and 2. So that's where I leave it off. So gentlemen, that does it for today's episode. Maybe one final comment. Let's just have it here very, very quickly. The path forward, moving forward with anthology films. We know that the Han Solo film is the only one that's been announced. It's going to be starting to film in the new year very shortly here. What are your thoughts now after seeing Rogue One about having anthology films outside of the saga storylines? Are we in trouble? Are you confident where they're going, and can they pull it off? And is this something you want to see continue? Geoff, how about you start us off first here?
A lot of this experiment was quite successful. They weren't far off. I mean, Harry, you said it. If they had been able to make these characters work, like if they had cut out maybe half of them and then really did some good development, like that's something that's doable. If they had done that, this would have been a really special film. So it's possible for this idea to work. It's such a rich universe, and you could tell so many different types of stories. And I'm glad they did take some chances here. So their willingness to do so is encouraging. And I mean, it's blown up the box office. I'm surprised at how well reviewed it is, to be honest, just because of how I feel about it. But because of those things, I mean, all the inputs are positive for Disney to be able to take some chances as they go forward. I think the Han Solo idea is dumb. The Han Solo movie sucks, and that's just one. The next one can still be awesome after that. So I'm optimistic. If the anthologies end up being a flop, well, we still got the main thread, which is the meat and potatoes anyway. So that's kind of how I feel.
Andrew.
I like the experiment. I like what they've done, but I think they also have to be very selective in the direction that they take these one-off movies. As Geoff mentioned, the Han Solo origin, I think is dumb as well. I think my expectations for that movie are going to be fairly low, just because with the iconic character of Han Solo, they're going to have to put together, the actor has got such big shoes to fill, but also the tone of that movie, I don't know which direction it's going to go. So I'm in a way looking forward to it, but I think it was a risky decision to make. I liked Rogue One. I think that was an easy one to do, but moving forward, I think they have to be selective so we don't have this oversaturation of Star Wars. I'm nervous about the direction that it is going. I think Disney has done such a tremendous job with Marvel, and I don't think that they're going to take it down a path that they can back on we're going to regret. It's cautious optimism, and that's where I think after I watch episode 8, I think that'll give me a good indication of whether or not they're going to rock the boat in a good direction, if that makes any sense. But I'm not looking forward to the next one. I'm looking forward to the one after that. So we'll see how it goes.
Nathan.
Well, I think they're at least off to a good start, and they know that these anthologies can work. Yeah, I don't know if I care for the idea of a Han Solo, because I don't feel like that's compelling at all. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see, see a trailer. Don't know too much about the movie yet at this point. I think we will get an Obi-Wan standalone movie. I don't know if I like that idea necessarily, although I think bringing Ewan McGregor back would be a solid move. I heard like they were going to announce a Boba Fett standalone. That fell through with that director Trank, and the whole Fantastic Four fallout. I would love them to see anthology movies go back to the Old Republic, around that. There's a lot to mine just from that, and still be very separate from the regular anthology movies. So I'm optimistic for the future, but I felt pretty optimistic after Phantom Menace. Like, he'll fix all the problems, and it'll be great. It'll be great.
Don't like where they're going with Han Solo. I think that's a garbage shit idea. That's bottom of the barrel direction. That just reeks of desperation to me. It's like, I can't think of anything else. But the fans like Han Solo, and this is where, Geoff, I mentioned before, fandom for some reason has this obsession with that character, and I just don't see it. I agree with you guys. It's not a compelling move. I don't really see how you can do a character arc with that character as it is anyways, because he's pretty one note and you can't really take him anywhere because he has to be at a certain point when we see him in A New Hope. So I think that's a massive mistake. I agree with Nathan. They should go in the Old Republic. They need to now separate themselves. They didn't experiment. They should separate themselves from any pre-existing storyline or characters and just do something new, whether it's Old Republic or you're going in the future, or hell, just fucking do, Jar Jar's cousin, the adventure of Jub Jub.
Jam Binks.
Yeah, he's alphabets with extra J's, it's like, it's okay. Something new and refreshing, instead of just tying in. I have a funny little prediction here, guys. I think that the way they're going, even with the saga storyline, they're going to be tying into Obi-Wan. I think they are retconning George Lucas's and removing George Lucas's DNA from the entire saga, because I still have that feeling that Obi-Wan Kenobi is the key even to episode 8 and 9. No spoilers, no nothing. That's just a prediction. Funny feeling I have, and there'll probably be an Obi-Wan movie and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that it'll be the royal bloodline will no longer be the Skywalkers after this trilogy is done. It's going to be the Kenobi bloodline.
I agree with you, Harry. In fact, no spoilers, but you can kind of guess at, they'll probably wait to announce an Obi-Wan movie
after episode 8
for reasons we won't talk about here, but you can figure it out.
Yeah, I got that funny feeling too, and if they're going in that direction, I'm just shaking my head because I don't know. Anyways, I think really that saga should be done after this trilogy and then just move on to something new, but that's just me. But that's it for today's show, gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending. We managed to get this done in 3 hours, so congratulations to everybody. Geoff, I think you have some tenderloin waiting for you. Your girlfriend was pretty adamant that you're not allowed to go past 3 hours, so I did my best. I hope you enjoy your fancy feast. And
success.
So Andrew, Nathan, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again.
And Geoff, I will just announce what we're doing next time on the show. I believe it's my pick here, so...
Let's hear the bomb, baby.
We haven't delved into this genre too much, except for hitting mainstream movies where it's applicable. But I thought we'd go back to the glory days of the 80s, action films of that time. Nothing has been replicated since, and I thought we'd analyze it is literally the last action movie of the 1980s, as we are going to discuss and analyze Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell in Tango and Cash.
Is that the last movie made in the 80s? Or the last action movie from the 80s?
December 1989. It was released.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's going to be a fun one. I have my reasons for picking that one, and that's one of the reasons, but I think that's a fun one. I know you've seen it, and I think you sort of like that one, so I think that's going to be a fun one to pick apart.
Yeah, that'll be a blast.
All right. So, gentlemen, thank you all for attending today and discussing it. And see you next time.
Be careful not to choke on your aspirations.